It is now 7 o'clock. I'd like to call this meeting of the Urbana City Council Committee of the Whole to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Wu, Mr. Evans.
Here.
Ms. Hersey, Ms. Colasetti,
Here.
Ms. Bishop,
Here.
Ms. Wilkin,
Here.
Mr. Quisenberry, Mayor Marlin.
Here.
Thank you. The first item is approval of the minutes of the previous meetings. There's one from 5/1/2023, public hearing minutes, and 5/1/2023, the normal minutes. Is there a motion?
I'll move approval of minutes from 5/1 public hearing and 5/1 meeting minutes.
I'll second.
Moved by Chandra, seconded by Chris. Are there any corrections? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Okay, the minutes are approved. Are there any changes or additions to the agenda, Mayor Marlin?
The presentation on the use of force report will have to be rescheduled due to Chief Searles was called away for another task.
Okay, thank you. We will take that off the agenda for tonight. Any other additions? Seeing none, okay. We will move on to public input. We have a number of emails to read in, but if anybody present would like to come up to the microphone and state their name and make their statement for the record, please feel free to do so. If anybody would like to speak to the committee of the whole, please feel free to come up and speak at the microphone. Anything that you would like to speak on?
This is concerning the men's shelter proposed on Springfield Avenue, which I believe is up for a vote of some sort tonight. My name is Rich Castle. I'm a resident of Urbana for 40 years or so. I live basically a couple houses from the 410 house, and just wanted to say I love Urbana. I love the community. This is, you know, I love everything about it, and I appreciate the Urbana and the organization that wants to do well for some homeless folks. But I have some issues just because I don't know anything about. I just heard like last Friday that this was up for a vote, and so I can't really be. I'm not against it, but I'm also not really for it because I don't know anything about it, and I feel like. So then I can't really. I think if we're gonna support an organization and that's helping people, that the community needs to know, you know, what's happening, what's going to go on there. I've read a little bit, 8 men, maybe access to 2 full-time caseworkers. I don't know if they're going to be living in the house or if they're phone call. So I live right there. I walk by there all the time. Again, I'm not against it, but I can't say I'm for it. I have a lot of questions that I think should be answered and addressed. You know, what's the long-range plan for this thing? Are there going to be more properties? Are there going to be public hearings about what's going to go on? And you know, what's the long-term plan? And you know, how it's going to be financed? Which I know they're asking for money to buy the house, but after that, where does it go? Is this the best house for that project? Again, I live close by. It's not like I don't want it there. You know, so again, what are the conditions? Are there rules for these folks that are going to be there? Are there going to be like other people hanging out? How will the house be maintained? Obviously, I believe it's a good thing to help the homeless. It's a bad situation for some people, and it's a good thing to do that. I have an investment in a home, and I want to take care of that investment. I just feel like it's been a little bit rushed. At least I haven't heard anything about it, and I've talked to some other people in the neighborhood. They have no clue. So thank you for hearing me, and I would much rather get some more information before there's a vote. Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else would like to address the committee of the whole? Please feel free to come up to the microphone, state your name, and make your statement.
Hello, good evening. My name is Rashid Bashir. I'm the Dean of the Granger College of Engineering at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. I'll make some comments regarding the Hope Village project, if that's okay. I know you've heard about it before, and I know you'll be talking about it more today. I just prepared some remarks, so I'll read those. I'm here joined by my colleague, Professor Ashlyn Stillwell, also. The University of Illinois is pleased to join Champaign County Healthcare Consumers and Carl Foundation in partnership to realize this project called Hope Village. The three entities have been working together from the very beginning through the concept development to the stage that we are now. We believe that the Hope Village will meet a specific need in the Champaign-Urbana County, in the Champaign-Urbana community. Chronic homelessness, especially for the medically fragile, is a challenge in our community, and this specific goal this is the specific goal of Hope Village, and we hope that this will meet the housing and the healthcare needs of these individuals. As you know, University of Illinois is the largest land-grant university in the state and one of the largest and finest in the nation. It is part of our mission and our responsibility to have a positive impact on our community and the world at large, and to transform lives for the better. As you know, during COVID-19, our campus came together with healthcare partners for the development of the SHIELD program to keep our community safe and healthy. This was a national model for others to aspire. That was an example of what we would call translational research or translational and applied work, where application of our research and knowledge to impact the community immediately as and when needed. At the University of Illinois, we have researchers and practitioners who are impacting people in our community across the state and across the world. Homelessness is another such grand challenge that we would like to put our hearts and our heads together to try to address. And Hope Village, we believe, is such an example of a very unique endeavor, guided by the leadership from CCHCC and Carl Health. We from the University of Illinois are committed to supporting this project and to the success of this project. As you know, much of what we do at the university is very long-term, has very long-term implication in terms of research. But I believe, and many of us believe, that we must also spend some of our time doing work that utilizes our talents and our expertise to give back to the community in the very near term, to have near-term results. This is what we usually mean by when we call translational or applied research. It's really this work to impact in the nearer term. And we believe that such translational and applied work can also be taken from, of course, basic fundamental discoveries into practice much more efficiently and quickly. I mean, that's what our mission is, to have this impact on people around us. Our work should create applicable results that directly benefit communities and people through this translational work. We have scholars across architecture, social work, engineering, and medicine, and beyond that can contribute to the success of Hope Village. Actually, many of us were looking for such a, what we would call a platform project, where many faculty and staff can give their time to have this translational impact, where faculty and staff from many disciplines can contribute their time and their talent to give back. At Hope Village, we plan to showcase sustainable infrastructure in practice. We plan to include energy sustainability, like solar panels with innovative microinverters designs, and geothermal technology for space heating and air conditioning, concepts that are also being tried in other settings. The buildings plan at Hope Village include trauma-informed design and sustainable building materials. The site plan will also include sustainable landscaping and stormwater management. So we believe that Hope Village can be a very unique, first-of-its-kind opportunity, bringing together a grassroots not-for-profit, a major hospital, and a major research university This is a very unique opportunity, we believe, for the city of Urbana to be leaders in addressing the housing needs, especially for the medically fragile. That's a specific niche that this community is looking to address, to provide housing and supportive wraparound services such as healthcare while reducing the chronic homelessness. We sincerely look forward to hearing from you, your concerns, your advice, and we really thank you for your time, and we look forward to working with all of you and our partners to make Hope Village a reality. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. If anybody else would like to come up to the microphone and speak, you have up to 5 minutes.
Hello, everyone. My name is Commissioner Turnbull. You probably know me around here wearing many different hats in the city and doing many community programs and stuff. I'm here in support of the HOPE program of building the tiny homes. I just want to pull the insight to you about it. Hallelujah, is that I had a vision about this first of all, how long do I have to talk? Is it 5 minutes? Okay, I had a vision about this about 3 or 4 years ago, building tiny homes, and I talked to a lot of people about it. And people at that time, they wasn't interested and different stuff like that, hallelujah. But then I had some people that were interested. And when I heard about that they had people partnering to build these tiny homes, I was so excited because to me, that is truly a blessing, hallelujah, that you can build a lot of tiny homes for people that don't have places at a lower cost. And sometimes people in the community might not like it because they're thinking like maybe, oh, they could do it somewhere else and this and that. They're doing it where they can get a space to get these people in. And we can't wait forever for people to want to give them a space to put these people to build tiny homes. And the places they might want to build it, they're so expensive, we won't get that many tiny homes built because they'll be charging so much money for the property. Hallelujah. And right now, with gun violence and a lot of other stuff going on, and there's property other places, we should be using it. And all this other stuff that some people are saying, I'm not with that. I'm with building these tiny homes for these people. Any way that we can house these people, we need to do that. Hallelujah. And only that, excuse me, I'm not going to say excuse me for saying hallelujah because I'm a Christian. But any way that we can get these homes built, we need to be doing it. It is truly a blessing that we can get this done. And that's all I want to say. And when you go thinking about it and voting for it, please think in consideration of we need a lot of homes, just not those little tiny homes. We need to get some more tiny homes and get some more places and build some more like that. Not only that, we can get some of these buildings around here, hallelujah, that's empty too, and house those people in it. We need to house as many people we can house and do what we need to do. And if there's anybody that wants to come up and talk negative about this stuff, hallelujah, I'm just going to pray for you. Because, hallelujah, it's a blessing that we can get people to do this. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you.
All mic. Well, that's okay. My name is Jennifer Putman. I live at 402 West Delaware Avenue. I'm wearing this T-shirt with pride. I serve on the board of directors of the Champaign County Healthcare Consumers, and I'm proud of our history. I'm proud of our staff. I'm proud of my executive director. I'm proud to be associated with others who have spoken about our partnership with the proposed Hope Village. It would be an error for me not to visit some statements that have been made in other environments. For example, at a community meeting a couple of weeks ago that I attended, at a Plan Commission meeting here in this venue, where people from the community not far from where it is proposed that Hope Village be built stated their concerns about, well, I don't think I can trust. I don't think I can trust what's going on here with Carl. I don't think we can trust what's going to happen with phase 2 or phase 3. And I've heard, and then a rumor would follow. Our executive director, Claudia Lenhoff, could not be more sincere when she has invited anyone with concerns about the future of Hope Village to please sit on the board of directors, have a seat at the table. The table hasn't even been set yet. You're invited to be in on the ground floor. There is room for everyone to be involved, and I hope that people with concerns will be involved and express their concerns, so that if there not be a phase 2 with which you don't agree, so that you don't have to relive mistrust. I don't know if people can remember, there was a time when Champaign County healthcare consumers and Carle Foundation Hospital did not see eye to eye on too much. There was a time when we would sing Christmas carols at Carle Hospital because of some of their practices, and the words to some of the carols had Scrooge worked into them. Well, I'm willing to not forget, but forgive and turn a page. And I ask that anyone who has misgivings about how the community has been treated in their remembered past, turn the page, have a seat at the table, guide this project for which there is such need, and the project couldn't have a better name than Hope. Thank you very much for taking these considerations seriously, as I know you will tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. If anyone else would like to address the committee of the whole, please feel free to come up to the microphone. You'll have up to 5 minutes.
So my name is Alan Axelrod. I'm a 7-year resident on the north end of Urbana. And there are some patterns that folks tend to be quite blind to when they're doing things without adequate consultation to the community. This does apply when it comes to Hope Village, and I mean that respectfully, although I definitely will accept Linda Turnbull's prayers. It doesn't matter if you have a seat on the board if you don't have majority control when you are dealing with a community that has significant distrust. And that is one of the issues that is at hand when it comes to Hope Village. What does it matter if we have 2 seats? If we can be outvoted every time by CCHCC, Carle, or the university? I mean, there are some farcical components of this, but there's also some deeply disrespectful things that have happened. So I'm going to flip to some notes that I had from the July 13th meeting regarding Hope Village, because I had written a message for a gentleman wearing a collared red shirt that was sitting behind me, because I heard them make a remark. So the note that I wrote for that person was, "Don't call folks assholes, guy in red shirt." The problem was that he was characterizing anybody that had negative responses or otherwise wanting the city to pump the brakes when it came to the project as assholes. That is really disrespectful to a community that wants to say, hold on, pump the brakes, talk to us. You had this plan without talking to us about this, getting our insight now when you are also talking over us, which did happen on July 13th. I don't know that you know, but there was actually a person who recorded it. You can hear it if you want. So that's the kind of thing that's going on here, is that you all looked at a just proposal. Yes, we should house medically fragile folks. But whether you know it or not, these dynamics are happening, and we do need to be slower, more deliberative about it, and more inclusive of our community when it comes to these things. Again, democratic community control of a board, otherwise that inclusion is farcical. We need a grocery store on the north end, and the university with their sustainability study. I mean, I also worked at the university for some time. I know how to critique research, so let me just provide one critique. Your sustainability study, if it doesn't include the emissions from the bus that you're going to be using for a once-a-week grocery store, is deceitful, is not comprehensive. Wouldn't it be more sustainable to have a grocery store on the north end? There is a state budget of $20 million to help communities just like ours getting a grocery store. Are you willing to work with us on that? Please be on the record about that. If you're going to come into our community and work on a project, demonstrate trust. A way of doing that, again, is majority Democratic community control of that. Because otherwise, are you really trusting the community, or are you forcing things through? Because right now, it's the latter. So, I do want to say, though, that this is overall a well-intentioned project. It's just that, and Linda, I'm not going to take you at of record on this, but I do want to cite a remark that you had made. If this was not because of land availability, but because of the cheapest parcel of land, which happened to be in the historically black north end of Urbana, we got a problem here. I hope that that is incorrect. I don't want to disparage, but that's...
Can you please make sure you're speaking into the microphone and to the committee so we can hear you, please? Excuse me, can we please have one comment at a time, please? Thank you. And if you would direct your comments to the committee of the whole and not to other members of the community, we are here to listen to you.
And the 20 seconds back, please. So the main issue that we have here is that there are decisions being made in an uninclusive manner with a process that's already underway, and what we keep hearing is that there is no way to pump the brakes. But at the same time, we're told that this process isn't over. So who's lying? Are you willing to meet with the community? Are you willing to cede majority control to actually demonstrate trust on a project? Or is this just a liberal veneer for just something else? Have a good night.
If anyone else would like to address the council committee of the whole,
I made something, and I'm going to have to correct it. Because like I'm saying is, hallelujah, and I'm going to get back to it again. Why do you always want to complain
I'm so sorry,
when
but
people...
it's supposed
Why
to
do
be
you
one
always want to
comment.
complain when people want to come to your community and do something great? Hallelujah. It's enough people dying out
Ms.
here.
Turnbull, thank you so much for
Hallelujah.
your contribution.
So
We would like
I'm
to
saying
make
to
sure
you is
everyone has an
that these
opportunity
people are
to
putting
speak.
money to get people housed, and you complaining about that. What else are you going to complain about?
Thank you so
Complain
much
and be
for your
positive
feedback.
here.
We would like
These
to give
people are doing a
everyone
great
an
job.
opportunity to
Now,
speak.
if there was some errors there, fix them, but build them houses and get them up.
Thank you. Anybody else would like to address the committee of the whole, please feel free to come up and speak into the microphone. Please state your name for the record, and you will have up to 5 minutes. Just as a general reminder, please remember that these are comments to the Urbana City Council Committee of the Whole. We appreciate the opportunities for public engagement, but we would ask that people direct their comments to the Committee of the Whole. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jon Rischau, and I would like to speak to the man's shelter on Springfield. I'm living about 500 feet away from that, and I just feel a little uneasy about it. I feel a little bit concerned about it. I heard about it. I don't really know what that is coming. As far as I understand, they're purchasing the building, so my concern is that there's a quick process to create something, and nobody has really thought about the long-term effect on this area of the neighborhood and on downtown. And I just wanted to make that heard. Thank you.
Thank you. If anybody else would like to address the Committee of the Whole, please feel free to come up to the microphone.
I don't know if this is possible, but my name is Eldridge Melinda Carr, and I have 2 letters. One is from the Carver Park Neighborhood Association president who's been ill, so I'm going to read that, and I had some additional comments. I don't know if I can get extra time, but I'm going to try to do what I can. Addressed to the Honorable Mayor Diane Marlin, Urbana City Council members as well, regarding the Hope Village ordinance.
Sorry, could you pull the microphone down a little bit so we can hear you better? Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Much better, thank you.
Dear Mayor Marlin and members of the council, I bring you greetings on behalf of the Carver Park Neighborhood Association. The purpose of this letter is to express to you our concerns and objections to the development of the reference project proposed to be adjoined or adjacent to Carver Park residential properties. Please understand that we sympathize with the homeless and those in need. Our objection has nothing to do with the need for provisions for the homeless, but rather the location you have chosen. It appears to us that some of your projects of late are projected to be placed adjoining or adjacent to the Carver Park neighborhood versus somewhere on the other side of town. In a previous conversation with Mayor Marlin concerning another project proposed, found such a comment offensive. Concerning another project proposed for this area, her thought was that it would benefit our neighborhood. We found such a comment offensive if you do not live in the neighborhood. It was brought to our attention that there are 17 possible locations where this project could go. Carl Foundation and the University of Illinois own other properties. Why this area then? One of our concerns is the amount of traffic that would come into the neighborhood. We have quite a few young children here and already have concerns about the current volume of traffic and their safety. Adding more simply increases our concerns. We were told that the traffic volume would not increase and that the only through traffic would be emergency vehicles. We do not trust that, and no guarantee is offered. Once an opening is made for emergency vehicles, others may take advantage also, with occasional heavy rainfalls. Although there has not been much rain lately, our neighborhood often has flooding. Another concern is what impact this development may have on our sewer lines. Streets in our neighborhood are deteriorating with enormous potholes. We have a few large vehicles that commute through our neighborhood. We have addressed the need for a street repair to the city of Champaign, but nothing has been done. There's concern not only with vehicular traffic, but also those on foot who may use this as an avenue to get to the adjacent property. Again, the safety of our children and residents is an issue. Carver Park brings history to Champaign County in that it is the first African-American subdivision built in the Champaign-Urbana area. We have tremendous concern for the safety of our elderly residents and our youth. Our desire is that you help to preserve the history of our neighborhood. We ask that you strongly reconsider this development in this location and that you vote no. Sincerely, Deborah J. Roberts, President of the Carver Park Neighborhood Association. Then I want to make a few comments. Speaking on the same subject, asking that you keep this item in the committee of the whole due to significant community concerns and unanswered questions related to the project. We do not have the minutes following the second neighborhood meeting on July 13, and there have been inadequate community input regarding the new addition to the Champaign subdivision. One question is related to the Plan Commission recommendations, which are not currently posted, so we do not know if those recommendations are still valid or if we will be working with additional recommendations after the rescheduling of the July 17th meeting. One other question that has been raised is, do we need an intergovernmental agreement related to assessing the new development through Champaign? What kind of mitigating factors do they have related to the existing capacity for the site plan? Those issues have caused a lot of backlash and concern for the current residents. We appreciate the Plan Commission's need to consider the circumstances of the residents in the subdivision in the preliminary proposal. The media has not had a balanced representation of the input from the community. We are not opposed to housing the homeless and understand the need in our community. However, the proposed location did not consider an impact study of the neighborhood, and there are inconsistencies with the information provided to the public and lack of transparency in engaging the homeowners who will be impacted most by this development, which leads to mistrust issues which have been historically prevalent due to other projects that have claimed. Let me stop. Do I have it? Can you give me a little bit more time? Or?
I think you read another letter. So do you have just a little bit more of a statement? If you can wrap that up, I'd appreciate it.
Okay. location of the site was not publicly revealed until 5 months after the ARPA presentations, which was on April 17th when it was revealed by our own council member for Ward 3. On December 12th was when the presentation was made by Claudia Klinhoff and Philip Rawl, and they did not have that at the time. And so in talking to our council member, she expressed her concerns about this location, which our neighborhood, most people, there's some who are in favor, but the neighborhood, most people are concerned about that location because of the lack of amenities and other things that are impacting our neighborhood, as I read in the letter before. So we're asking the council to reconsider this location. And as a resident of Dr. Ellis, I spoke with the Plan Commission. I don't know if you were able to hear the concerns, but some of the things are that someone on every street in Dr. Ellis, I'm living in the Dr. Ellis neighborhood, people are concerned about the lack of trust. People have heard that there's going to be some kind of thoroughfare with our area, a redevelopment, such as what happened at Bristol Place. So people are very concerned about the future plans of what's happening with this development, because we don't have the information about who the owner is going to be. And I know I'm running, but it's important for me to say these things. And what was said by Alan Altero, we agree, but with the board, there needs to be controlling factor if, in fact, that is, you know, in fact, if the development does happen, we want to have a community-controlled board.
Thank you
because
so
that's
much. If
important.
you have additional comments, we'd be happy to submit them into the record.
Okay, and I just wanted to say also, one last thing was that the Elton Place, which was on campus, was the people who lived in there were undesirable people, and they were moved away from the campus area. And I just want to read this comment from.
I'm sorry, we have to give other
the News
community
Gazette, if you
members
don't
an
mind.
opportunity. You can email it to us or hand it to the clerk, and we'll make sure it gets included in the record.
Okay, I'm gonna be
Thank you.
obedient, and I hope that you will reconsider.
Absolutely. Thank you.
you.
If anybody else would like to address the committee of the whole, please come up to the microphone. Thank you. State your name for the record.
My name is Kayla Johnson. Thank you for allowing me to address tonight. Can you hear me okay? Okay. I'm the director of Hospice Hearts Animal Rescue, and we are in the process of purchasing the facility at 102 North McCullough, which would be directly next to the 410 West Springfield building. We are an all-volunteer, non-for-profit community service organization, and we place dogs and cats which have become orphaned due to owners passing away, heading into a nursing home, serious illness. We are not an animal shelter, so we're not open to the public. Everything is by appointment only, but that means nobody stays on our on the property for any long length of time. And I do understand what homelessness means in rescuing dogs and cats. We are acutely aware of the living conditions and often abuse that animals and humans both experience. Our aim is to always place them in loving homes where they're loved and cared for until they're adopted, but with us, it's always love. Our organization serves the community by providing this service for free. I mean, there are adoption fees, but we got to survive somehow. We currently have approximately 100 volunteers, some foster animals in their homes. Many assist with facility maintenance. They provide support for day-to-day operations. We would not exist without volunteers. I'm a volunteer. I'm the director, and this is 60, 80, many hours a week. And as the director, I am responsible for ensuring the safety and security of my volunteers. And I'm here tonight because of concerns from many that I've heard from many of my volunteers, and I'm afraid to lose them. We've worked really hard to maintain a really great volunteer base, and I just want to share an example from a female volunteer. She's afraid to be volunteering with us at night. It's dark, and women existing around men at night can just be scary. That's just the way it is. And I don't know how many other volunteers might feel that same way when they're on site alone and often in winter hours when it gets dark very early. And I'm also aware there is a difference between perception and reality. The fact that someone is homeless does not mean that they will do harm. We are afraid because we don't know what this proposal really is asking for, what it means, but this is the perception on the part of many. I'm concerned there were no public meetings on this proposal to discuss whether this is the best location, and I'm concerned about what happens when something goes amiss, such as different conditions of the facility, loitering, and if this is really the best house for where this community will get to stay. I believe our community does have an obligation to serve the homeless, both humans and animals, and I hope you will consider our needs along with the human needs. But I am disappointed there wasn't a neighborhood meeting to seek more input about this proposal, and I ask that no decision be made until another discussion has happened. Thanks for allowing me to share my concerns.
Thank you. Anybody else like to address the committee of the whole?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for listening to my thoughts.
Could you actually tip it up a little bit? Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I wanted to speak very briefly about the men's shelter. Also, I want to state that I am a problem solver by nature, and I respect all people, and I want people to thrive. I just would like to ask that in this project, we, the direct neighborhood, are engaged with, because we will also in a reality engage with the neighborhood there with this house every day. At least that's what I expect. I am also a mom of a 4-year-old, and I live across of the Philpotts Rec Center, so I see hundreds of children going there every summer, and I wonder if it is the right place. However this question may be answered, I would like to be engaged with, and I felt really ambushed when I learned it yesterday night. I just feel we could really engage and work together as a community and make it better for everyone, and I just don't believe in an approach where it doesn't matter how, just get it done. I feel it does matter how, because we want to get it done sustainably, and we want people to thrive, and we don't want to get lost in sorry, German, losing the word. Vorurteile. Yes, and prejudices, and get lost in anxiety. So we wrote a letter to Chris Evans, which I believe he will read. That's why we're not reading it. So thank you for your time.
Could you state your name for the record, please?
Yes, Anna Gutsch.
Thank you. Anybody else like to address the committee of the whole? I believe there are a number of letters to be read. But if anybody else here in person would like to speak, we've got someone coming up to the microphone, so take your time.
Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. My name is Jacqueline Curry. I was at the last meeting, and I managed to read the minutes that were typed up. Whoever does the minutes, my name was omitted, I want to make sure that you know it's Jacqueline Curry. I'm a Carver Park resident. Second of all, I want to make a correction that it was stated that I said that I thought a good job was done with planning on the traffic, and I did not make that comment. My comment was that I thought a poor job was being done. We had enough traffic up there already, and we didn't need any additional traffic. So I'd like that correction to be made in the minutes, as I said. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to address the committee of the whole?
Oh, the minutes from the Plan Commission meeting, June 22nd.
Thank you. All right.
Good evening. I'm David Perrin. I'm speaking on behalf of Hospice Hearts Animal Rescue, as well as a City of Urbana resident for the past 5 or 6 years. As a volunteer that's a male, I'm definitely in the minority as far as helping out with Hospice Hearts Animal Rescue, because the majority of the population that helps out is female. And after hearing some of the concerns that are being brought up, I just wanted to make sure that I came and presented. You know, I personally have a rescue animal at home, it's a cat, Twerpy, and I went out and picked her up. And, you know, there's just something about when you help out the community, people that you don't know, people you'll never meet. And I think about what the world would be like if Hospice Hearts Animal Rescue wasn't here. And, you know, the concern about the area right next door to the house. And with the rescue looking to buy, there's already buy-in order for the lots and the house that's there. So, you know, it's a serious threat with this concern. So I hope people are thinking about the safety of the community around and how they're going to take care of that, because I would certainly hate to see Hospice Hearts not be there. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else like to address the committee of the whole? Come on up.
Hi, my name is Serenity Dodge. I'm 17 years old, but people are talking about how they would be afraid of people in all the tiny homes and stuff, but like over where I live at, where they're going to be putting the housing, a lot of people get shot up in 60, 70 rounds over there where I live at, and nobody's talking about that, but they really need to worry about that instead of just who's going to be worried in those tiny homes.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Lisa Gay Dixon. I am a lifelong resident of Champaign-Urbana, and I am also on faculty at the university. So I am very proud to be able to say I am both town and gown.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Could you pull down the microphone?
Okay.
Thank you very
Ooh,
much.
you can't hear me. That's amazing. I am also a member of the board of Champaign County Healthcare Consumers, and I have been volunteering for them for about 20 years. And I want to be very clear that in my experience, everything that we have done, especially in working with both Carl or the university on other projects in the past, has been as open and above board as possible. And I want to make sure that the board also recognizes that all of the steps that had to be gone through to have this community planned happened in a particular order because they were supposed to happen that way. That is how the institutions were asking us to do that. I want to be very clear that I had no part in that, but that the CCHCC did do a lot of literature drops and meetings with the communities in a couple of different places. I also wanted to be really clear about the Tiny Homes Village, that it is not transitional housing, it is permanent housing, and that studies have shown, I know some people don't like this, but the studies have shown nationally that when homeless folks are given an actual home that is their own, there is a lot higher success rate for those folks to move through. I also want to make it very clear that these permanent homes are for folks who are medically fragile. So they are folks who will mostly be inside of their homes. There is a lot of planning in terms of security for the area. There's also planning, I think the Dean of Engineering mentioned this earlier, there's a lot of planning in terms of security for the area, in terms of security as much as possible for the residents of Carver. Absolutely, we cannot guarantee 100% that things may not happen in the future, but I can say that the presentation of this village has answered a lot of the questions that have been brought up by folks. They may possibly not be the answers that folks want to hear, But I also want to say that the board is going to be comprised of residents from the community as well, from the specific community there, as well as from the larger Urbana community, and that nothing has been set in stone yet regarding that. So we absolutely, as my colleague Jennifer said earlier, welcome conversations with the community about how that board will be constituted. Again, the last couple of things I really want to say about the tiny homes is that their design has been really to help those folks who have been chronically homeless and who are medically fragile, who are in need of services. The village in and of itself is sort of is contained in a whole in terms of having security. That security will be put together with conversations with the residents of that neighborhood. So I just want to be very clear that we are asking folks to come and work with us on this possibility. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else like to address the committee of the whole? Council members have letters that they want to read.
Yeah,
Chris?
okay. I've got a bunch, and does everybody else have a few too? Because we could kind of share the load here. Okay, all right. Okay, this one, Dear Urbana City Council, as supervisor of Cunningham Township, I write in support of two proposals before you, which will greatly support township participants experiencing homelessness. I support the Hope Tiny Village project led by Champaign County Healthcare Consumers and designed to provide 30 small individual permanent homes for residents who have experienced homelessness and have medical fragility. At Cunningham Township, we operate emergency housing for this exact population. There exist almost no accessible permanent housing options for these residents. If they are lucky enough to get one of the few permanent supportive housing vouchers, they must find a landlord who will accept their often poor credit and work history and a home that accommodates their disability. A tough needle to thread. These residents are likely to die before finding a home. One participant I spoke with who was dying of cancer told me, I just want a little place of my own to be safe and secure until God takes me. Chronically homeless residents die on average at the age of 50, just 5 years shy of income qualifying for senior housing. This use is less intensive than the zoning for this property, which is R4, allowing for dense apartments. It will be gated for the safety of all, and it will have many more supportive services than a market rate apartment building, which offers zero. I also support CU at Home's acquisition of 410 West Springfield for use as transitional housing for homeless residents who are sober or working towards sobriety. A range of intermediate supportive housing choices are needed. The low barrier strides is essential shelter for all. What CU at Home will offer is essentially transitional housing for people who are working on sobriety and employment, which can be difficult in a congregate shelter. This move also opens up space at Strides, which has a waiting list. I appreciate that the terms of the agreement underline that CU at Home must operate in a non-discriminatory way. I would encourage the council to specifically add, quote, sexual orientation and gender identity, end quote, to the language. For all homeless programs, including ours, I am advocating for the continuum to take and follow up on any complaints so we can ensure accountability and quality of services across the continuum. Champaign County Healthcare Consumers and CU at Home are partners and have been fundees of Township. We plan on having a tight collaboration to greatly improve homeless services. Thank you, Danielle Chenoweth. Hi, I am the owner of Close Knit, a yarn shop on 311 West Springfield Avenue in Urbana. I heard that the city is discussing the men's homeless shelter at 410 West Springfield Avenue. I am not in favor of this plan because they will make the situation on this corner of the Springfield Avenue more difficult. There are a lot of people with children in the neighborhood. There is the Philpotts Center from the Park District, which has a number of children in their programs. I understand that you need a place for those men, but it would not be nice to have them in the house on 410 West Springfield in Urbana. Thank you, Bridget Pike. I apologize for. One more, and then you guys might want to take a turn, maybe. Good morning. I am writing in regards to resolution on tonight's Committee of the Whole agenda, a resolution approving and authorizing the execution of an Urbana Home Consortium sub-recipient agreement, the one for See You at Home, a men's non-congregate mid-barrier shelter. Prior to moving this agenda item to a vote, I urge the council to schedule a public meeting separate from the council meetings to address this proposal. My neighbors and I want to hear directly from See You at Home and city leadership about plans for the proposed shelter and have an opportunity to have our questions and concerns addressed. Thank you, Julie Lott.
Sharice.
I have one letter that I've been asked to read. Dear Urbana City Council members, I hope that this email finds you all well. I am Reverend Dr. Ricky E. Parks, pastor of the Pilgrim Baptist Church of Champaign, Illinois. The purpose of this email is to inform you that we, the pastor and disciples, support the Hope Village Project. Matthew 25:35 through 40, New International Version. For I was hungry and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger and you invited me in. I needed clothes and you clothed me. I was sick and you looked after me. I was in prison and you came to visit me. Then the righteous will answer him, Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you a stranger and invite you in, or needing clothes and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison and go to visit you? The king will reply, truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me.
Other letters?
Yeah, I've got more. Dear members of the Urbana City Council, I hope this email finds you well. I am writing to express my concerns about the proposed plan to open an all-men's shelter at 410 West Springfield Avenue. I deeply believe in the importance of providing support and assistance to those in need. However, we must carefully consider the potential impact such a facility might have on the safety and well-being of our community members. I'm sending this email as the former tenant of the neighboring house at 102 North McCullough Street, the same house where I also was a volunteer for Hospice Hearts Animal Rescue. Let me begin by emphasizing that I fully support efforts to address homelessness and provide a safe haven for individuals facing difficult circumstances. Urbana-Champaign is in dire need to get more resources for this issue. However, the proximity of the all-men's shelter to an animal rescue, for which most volunteers are women, brings up certain safety concerns that we cannot ignore. The volunteers at the animal rescue dedicate their time and efforts to providing care and shelter for vulnerable animals, and it is essential that they feel safe and secure in their environment. Opening an all-men's shelter nearby may introduce unknown elements and dynamics that could potentially compromise the safety of the volunteers and potential future tenants at the house. Safety is paramount in any community, and the presence of an all-men's shelter in the neighborhood must be thoroughly considered. I believe it is crucial to engage in open dialogue and collaborative discussions with relevant stakeholders, including residents, local law enforcement, and community organizations, to address these concerns and develop appropriate solutions. Before moving forward with the establishment of the all-men's shelter, I urge you to conduct a comprehensive safety assessment, considering the potential risks and implementing measures to ensure the security of the surrounding areas. Moreover, I encourage the organizers of the all-men's shelter to engage in community outreach to address the concerns and doubts of local residents. Openly communicating the shelter's goals, management, safety protocols, and commitment to being a responsible and contributing member of the community can help build understanding and support. In conclusion, I kindly request that the relevant authorities take these concerns seriously and thoroughly assess the potential impact of the all-men's shelter on our neighborhood and the volunteers at the animal rescue. By working together and addressing these concerns proactively, we can foster a safe and supportive community for everyone involved. Thank you for your attention to this matter. I look forward to hearing about the steps taken to ensure the safety and well-being of our community. Sincerely, Charlotte, here we go again, Peru, and I apologize if I mispronounced. I've got more long ones, but go ahead, Grace.
Yep. Grace, go ahead.
Yeah, I have two more on my radar that were specifically asked to be read into the record. While we did receive a lot of concerns or support about some of the issues here tonight, I was just going to read the ones that were asked to be read into the record. Please read these comments into the record tonight. Dear Urbana City Council members, unfortunately I cannot attend tonight's meeting in person, but I wanted to share some information with you regarding the Hope Village project, which is on your agenda tonight for approval of the preliminary planned unit development. I've provided Kevin Garcia with a document that details our outreach efforts to the adjacent neighborhoods regarding Hope Village. In summary of these efforts, we have held 2 neighborhood meetings. One meeting was with Pilgrim Missionary Baptist Church, which is north of Bradley Avenue and adjacent to the location of Hope Village. The other meeting was at New Free Will Baptist Church, which is near Douglas Park and south of Bradley Avenue. CCC-HCC, Champaign County Healthcare Consumers staff, spent over 40 hours in these neighborhoods doing lit drops, engaging residents, and inviting residents to these meetings. Most residents we encountered were very supportive. Their main concern was whether any homes or buildings will be torn down in order to build Hope Village. We informed them that none of them will be torn down and that Hope Village will be located in the field north of their neighborhoods. The document I provided to Kevin Garcia also addresses the various concerns that came up at the meetings at the churches, as well as some that were expressed at the Plan Commission meeting. Ironically, one of those concerns of the few neighborhood residents was about whether the neighborhood would be overrun by new people. I say ironically because the property where Hope Village will be located is zoned in such a way that a developer could purchase that property and build very large apartment buildings that would greatly impact the neighborhood in many deleterious ways, including significant increases in traffic and noise. Yet they would not be required to seek approval for a planned unit development. We are seeking to build 30 small permanent homes on foundations unattached to one another, as well as a community center. But because the homes will be unattached, we must seek PUD approval. We are very excited about moving forward with Hope Village. Right now, there are many community members who are homeless and medically fragile and who are in desperate need of permanent supportive housing, which Hope Village will provide. This project was created in response to a serious gap in our homeless housing system, which affects the most vulnerable homeless individuals. Thank you for your time and consideration. Sincerely, Claudia Lenhoff, Executive Director, Champaign County Healthcare Consumers. I had one more that was asked to be read in, if I may, by Wanda E. Ward. Dear Urbana City Council members, please read this letter into the record for public input at July 24th meeting, since I am unable to attend the meeting in person. As the Executive Associate Chancellor of Public Engagement at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, I am pleased to enthusiastically support the Hope Village Small Homes community and coordinated care for medically fragile, chronically homeless individuals in the Champaign-Urbana area. Hope Village is a joint effort between Champaign County Healthcare Consumers, Carle Foundation, and the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, aiming to provide housing solutions and intensive case management for the hard-to-house homeless population. The Hope Village effort has received notable approval and support from campus leadership, including Chancellor Robert Jones. As part of our land grant mission, the University of Illinois is proud to engage in education with community impact. Hope Village infrastructure and operational plans align with our educational efforts across campus, including the Granger College of Engineering, School of Architecture, in the College of Fine and Applied Arts, School of Social Work, Carle, Illinois College of Medicine, and the Seibel Center for Design. Through the Hope Village Partnership, the University of Illinois will support active translational research for improved health outcomes and community sustainability. Building on the world-class research at our campus, our facility will support Hope Village through innovative site planning and lay out trauma-informed housing solutions and infrastructure design for sustainability. Hope Village presents many opportunities for Illinois research and action to make a positive difference in the community. Finally, the Hope Village Partnership enables authentic student engagement in the Champaign-Urbana community. We are training the leaders of tomorrow, yet our students are already leaders in campus efforts that design and build innovative housing, improve local sustainability, and build community. Through Illinois efforts with community-engaged scholars, our students can actively engage in the innovative and transformative approach of Hope Village. The University of Illinois is pleased to fully support Hope Village effort. Sincerely, Wanda E. Short, PhD, Executive Associate Chancellor for Public Engagement.
Chris.
Dear City Council members, Mayor, City Administrator, and City Clerk, and the public as a whole, my family and I reside in the direct vicinity of the proposed men's shelter on Springfield Avenue, and we have strong concerns about this plan and its effect for the surrounding neighborhood and downtown Urbana. We are deeply uneasy about the way this decision is being made without any opportunity for public input and public discussion. Overall, this situation leads us to be strongly against locating the shelter here. The neighborhood between downtown Urbana and Lincoln Avenue features a very active kids' playground and public recreation area, and the Philpotts Recreation Center draws a lot of young kids, teens, and adults for the summer programs like pre-K summer camps, teen hangout zone, and many more. This area is zoned as single-family living, and the residents here are doing their best to create a family-friendly neighborhood. Our concern is that by locating a homeless shelter in close vicinity, that the community will feel unsafe. It will lead to increased gathering of homeless individuals, and we fear it might lead to harmful situations with the population living in this area. This area is already dealing with a lot of challenges due to its close proximity to the liquor store, empty lots, and commercial areas along the train tracks. One night we woke up because our home and vehicle was fiercely attacked by an individual under the influence in the middle of the night. I found myself rushing my wife and kids inside from our front yard several times when possibly mentally unstable individuals were aggressively passing through our street and occupying the playground and benches next to the Philpotts Rec Center. The liquor store around the corner has been a crime scene where a customer has been shot to death in an exchange of gunfire involving over 50 shots. My concern is that the shelter will accelerate the trend of eroding the family-style neighborhood and turn this area into an unsafe and undesirable neighborhood for the long term. The new shelter is planned to be located right on Springfield Avenue, which is one of the main traffic arteries on which people, citizens and visitors alike, enter the downtown area. This area is zoned as neighborhood business and should be serving the immediate neighborhood as well as incoming people. Placing a shelter along this street in a highly visible manner will permanently influence the development of this area contrary to its intention. Because it is so close to downtown, it will also affect downtown, the businesses, and the general feel of the area. Downtown Urbana is already struggling with a lack of foot traffic and closed businesses. Is this really the right thing to do when the city is trying to make downtown Urbana more desirable and draw more residents and visitors. I am very concerned that this location is unsuitable and does not align with the interests that Urbana residents have for their downtown. I understand that if the building is purchased by the organization and it is set up as a shelter, it will be there for the foreseeable future. Do we really all know what a wide impact this will have in the next 5 years? We learned about this project through an article in the News Gazette on July 15th and are very uneasy that there has not been a public presentation or an opportunity for the neighborhood and its residents to learn more about this project. It feels like this decision is being shoved through the official instances in order to eliminate any critical and constructive feedback. I ask that this vote is not to be final until there has been an opportunity for the residents to learn about this project, voice their concerns in a public forum, and have a public discussion on the impact of this neighborhood and downtown. As a member of this community, I do support the need for low-income housing and supporting our friends without a home. We also see the potential pitfalls of this project. Rushing into this has not built trust with the neighborhood residents, and I am deeply worried that the implications of this project have not been considered. Will this area become a homeless destination? How are we supposed to place trust in the leadership of this shelter and the organization as a whole when there is little to no information? And what happens if the project does not develop as intended? There are a lot of individuals involved, including homeless people, employees, etc., that have to work together in order to make sure this project doesn't go sideways and people can thrive. Respectfully, Johan Risha. And I've got one more, folks. This is the last one. And thank you for your patience. Dear members of Urbana City Council, I hope this email finds you in good spirits and health. My name is Nikki Gentry, and I reside on the 500 block of West Stoughton Street. I am writing to you today with utmost respect and compassion to express my concerns about the proposal to open the new men's mid-barrier shelter at 410 West Springfield Avenue. Let me begin by saying that I understand the importance of addressing homelessness and providing support to those in need in our community. I firmly believe that we, as a compassionate society, should strive to create solutions that cater to the well-being and dignity of all our fellow citizens. Homelessness is a complex issue that requires holistic and thoughtful approaches, and I sincerely commend the City of Urbana's efforts to find ways to assist those in vulnerable situations. However, as a directly affected resident, I urge you to consider the potential impacts of the proposed shelter in our neighborhood. While I wholeheartedly support the idea of offering aid to the homeless, I believe it is equally crucial to ensure transparency and engage in meaningful dialogue with the residents who will be directly impacted by this decision. Before moving forward with the approval of the project, I kindly ask that you hold off on making a decision until residents like myself have had the opportunity to voice our concerns, questions, and suggestions regarding the proposal. A community thrives when all members actively participate in shaping its future, and I feel it is essential for us to be heard and considered in matters that significantly affect our living environment. Some of the concerns I have include: 1, safety and security. I understand that shelters are operated with the best intentions. It is essential to have a comprehensive plan in place to ensure the safety of both shelter residents and the surrounding community. 2, services and support. I would appreciate more information on the support and resources that will be provided to the individuals in the shelter to help them reintegrate into society and access stable housing in the long term. 3, transparency and communication. I ask for a commitment to open communication channels between the City Council and residents to address ongoing concerns and feedback as the project develops. By allowing Urbana residents to participate in the decision-making process, we can collaborate to find a solution that benefits both the homeless population and the existing neighborhood community. I kindly request that you consider this compassionate appeal to hold off on approving the homeless shelter proposal until we, the residents, have had the opportunity to engage with the City Council and provide our insights and questions. Thank you for your time and understanding. I look forward to your response and the possibility of working together to ensure the best possible outcome for everyone involved. Sincerely, Nikki Gentry, and that's all I have.
I think we have a couple more comments to be read. If you submitted a comment and didn't specifically say that it was to be read aloud, it's not that it won't be included. It will be included in the minutes. We just only read aloud the ones that we've been requested to do so. And we have another community comment too. Go ahead, come on up.
Thank you. Hello, City Council. My name is Sarah Nixon. I live in Urbana, and I was attending this meeting from home and just listening to some of the input. And I overwhelmingly heard input that is opposed to a homeless shelter on Main Street in Urbana, and like the sentiments expressed just I find deeply, deeply disturbing. First of all, there's a very them and us and not in my backyard kind of picture that's coming out that just I find distressing. Urbana is famous for being a welcoming, a liberal, a holistic, inclusive, caring community. Here's an opportunity to stand by that. I agree that processes and discussions clearly need to be more transparent or more inclusive and engaging neighbors and community, but I would just like to make a few points. So I think the first point I would like to address is the idea that homeless men are somehow going to be scary and dangerous and a threat. I think actually if you do engage the community and have some presentations and vice versa and listen to feedback, I hope that would be a great opportunity to present the actual data and statistics on this. Homeless men are in fact far more likely to be physically assaulted, to be sexually assaulted, to report having survived rape, and again, physical violence, far more so than ever being in a category of residents who you might worry would be perpetrators of it. What else? It's not a them. It's not like these scary people who, what are they doing here looking in my window or looking at people entering the neighbor's house. This is their home. If they live there, they're actually residents. They have a right to be there. So I don't comprehend the concern that they'll be hanging around. I think I heard the term loitering. Hanging around your home is not loitering. So I had to speak out because this is just really seems like there's a real disconnect in the way people are conceptualizing this. I've worked at a cat shelter, a pet rescue shelter. I co-founded one in the city where I grew up. We would work almost 24-hour day shifts sometimes if we had sick animals. It was in the heart of downtown in a city of 5 million. We did not have escorts. We did not have undue fears for our safety, and we too were largely female volunteers. You make arrangements with people who care about you. You let them know where you're going to be, and you call them or have them call you and make sure you're safe, like you would any normal safety precaution you would take anywhere. I think having a shelter for 8 men, and let's be clear, this is 8 human beings. This is not 80 people that is going to bring in a massive influx of volume or traffic and so on. This would be a wonderful opportunity to reach out to them and see if they would like to volunteer at the shelter. And I don't mean to be heartless or uncomprehending of people's concerns, but I think these putative or potential residents are being demonized and vilified before they even exist. And I think the reality is they would overwhelmingly be harmless and grateful and wonderful, community members. So that's my input. Thanks for listening.
Thank you. I think Mayor Merlin has a couple letters to read as well, and then I see another community member who would like to speak as well.
This is from Muhammad Al-Hiti. Dear City Council members, the Mayor, City Administrator, and City Clerk. My name is Muhammad Al-Hiti, the owner of World Harvest International and Gourmet Foods and Strawberry Fields Cafe. I've started my business in Urbana since 1991 when I opened my first business. As a business owner, I'm supporting the project of the Hotel Royer and also supporting the city to grant the extension to the developer since the success of the project depends on that extension. I also can see clearly that the project will bring more revenue to our community and all the local business owners, including me. Thank you all for the great jobs you are doing to keep our city beautiful and charming. Sincerely yours. The other message is from Darren Riggs, Urbana City Council. I was fortunate to see inside the Hotel Royer development on Friday, July 14th, and must say I was impressed by the amount of work done to the facility. I think it's clear that Icon Hospitality is making concrete, good faith progress on what nobody will disagree is a very large and complex project. As an Urbana business owner, I can sympathize with the developer and confirm that equipment availability is still not back to pre-pandemic normal. Our business has normal repair parts that remain back-ordered now for over 9 months. Additionally, costs are up everywhere, and the amount of the city's bond guarantee has not increased in line with inflation. As cost and inflation continue upwards, and while the hotel hasn't opened, the relative value of the bond guarantee goes down every day. Per the agenda packet that I was able to review, city staff is recommended to consider adding language that would diminish the incentive in the event that the deadline is missed, without recommending a specific dollar value. This feels like homework that was submitted incomplete. Every day that goes by without occupancy, Icon Hospitality's costs for the project go up, and the inflation-adjusted value of the city's bond issuance investment goes down. Has anyone considered or quantified that already existing encouragement to finish the project as quickly as possible? Why is that not enough on its own? What is the cost to the city of the hotel not being open? How much of that is already offset by delaying the bond issuance? Please do not pull a number out of thin air to insert in this ordinance. I guarantee there are real increasing costs the developer is already incurring every day. To make up a number without any research behind it would appear arbitrary and capricious to a business spending money in Urbana to bring even more business to Urbana. If there are real costs to the city, have staff publish that work ahead of time so the council and public can review it. Sincerely, Darren Riggs.
And I believe I saw another community member. Please feel free to come up to the microphone, state your name for the record, and you'll have up to 5 minutes to speak.
Good evening. My name is Darlene Bailey, and I live in the Dr. Ellis subdivision, and I'm here this evening to speak concerning the Hope Village project. I did have a lot to say, but it's so much being said this evening until I'm going to make this short. The people in Carver Park does experience flooding. And I was told that they have been working for years to try to get something done about that and haven't had any luck with that. So in saying that, they need an infrastructure upgrade, but I'm confused a little bit about that being Champaign and then the Hope the Hope Village being built in Urbana. Now, but let me also say this. The people in the surrounding community is not opposed to Hope Village. We are opposed to where it's being built now because of things that they've been trying to do in the past that they could not get done. And therefore, you're going to build a new subdivision with a detention base that's going to drain their, and these are beautiful homes. I have seen them, and they are. And to bring in the beautiful homes with the community center, the gardens, the trails, and everything is going to be absolutely gorgeous. And the people in the neighborhood is having problems. Now, how do you think they're going to feel about that? We know these people are important, okay? But the people in Carver Park is also important. We would like to see more businesses in the area that's going to generate revenues. There's no revenue coming from this. And I'd also like to know, were there any other alternative plans that was made when you presented this proposal just in case it didn't go through? What are you going to do then? And also, what about Champaign County Nursing Home? Is that still vacant? These people, I mean, something can be done with that, I'm pretty sure. But for the surrounding community, and I think in some of the meetings, I have heard different, from what is being written and what's being told to us is sometimes varies, it's different. Because we will not be receiving anything out of this. Not at all. Oh, I'm sorry. We'll get the car mobile bus and the food produce truck, which is already at Love Corner now. But we are not opposed to it. We have compassion. We want to see these people prosper as well. But I was also told that these people are medically fragile and probably transitioning into another life as well. So therefore, we are wondering, what can we do to pull together to get some of the things that we need done in the area as well as Hope Village? Thank you.
Thank you. Final call for comment. Okay, seeing none, we will move on. We have a proclamation. Want to do the proclamation next?
Thank you. This is a joint proclamation from the cities of Urbana, Champaign, the town of Normal, city of Bloomington, and the city of Charleston. It was intended to be read at the meeting last week, but the meeting was rescheduled to tonight. It is a proclamation in honor of the memory of Kristian K.P. Philpotts, who was shot to death as he worked as a Lyft driver in Urbana in January of 2022. Monday, a week ago, would have been his 31st birthday. Whereas Kristian K.P. Philpotts exhibited a love and passion for animals and a drive to care for them from the time he was 7 years old. And whereas K.P. began working as a junior recreation leader in the Chicago Park District's After School Matters program at the age of 13, attended the Chicago High School for Agricultural Sciences, and continued as a recreation leader until the age of 20. And whereas K.P. Philpotts earned a Bachelor of Science degree in pre-veterinary medicine from Illinois State University in 2016 and a Master of Science degree from Eastern Illinois University in 2018. And whereas K.P. served as an assistant farm manager, assistant dean with the Historically Black Council, and executive board business manager of the Student Pre-Vet Club at Illinois State University. And whereas K.P. was a solo pledge at Illinois State University for the Iota Phi Theta Incorporated fraternity in 2013, where he earned the name Captain Anchor Tenacious, and later served as president of the chapter. He went on to revitalize Iota Phi Theta fraternity at both Eastern Illinois University, where it had been closed for 27 years, and at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, where it had been closed for 7 years. And whereas K.P. Philpotts also devoted his efforts to bring science and pet safety to children by creating Kids for Science, as well as an annual Christmas charity drive, Iotas Are Us. And whereas Kristian K.P. Philpotts was most passionate about exotic animals and planned to earn a doctorate in veterinary medicine, which would have enabled him to work with zoo animals. And whereas K.P. often traveled to Urbana-Champaign to work as a Lyft driver to earn money toward his goal and to fund the Kids for Science program. And whereas K.P.'s life was violently cut short in January 2022. And whereas Christian K.P. Philpotts' legacy includes an endowed scholarship named the Dr. Christian K.P. Philpotts Scholarship for Veterinary Students and Animal Science Majors at Illinois State University, as well as a memorial bench in Redbird Plaza, a memorial paver in the commemorative courtyard at Eastern Illinois University. And whereas Christian K.P. of Philpotts will be honored by an annual scholarship established in his name by the Kappa Omega Graduate Chapter of Iota Phi Theta Incorporated Fraternity for a high school student attending either ISU, EIU, or UIUC. The fraternity will also fund an animal science education program for elementary and middle school age youth in the Urbana-Champaign area. And whereas Christian K.P. Philpotts' life was defined by hard work, determination, passion, and kindness in pursuit of his goal to help others and to care for animals. Now, therefore, we, the mayors of Urbana, Champaign, Bloomington, Normal, and Charleston, Illinois, declare July 17th as Christian K.P. Philpotts Day in our respective cities. And I joined his mother, Marla Rice, and the mayor of Bloomington and a representative of the mayor of Normal last Monday for a ceremony at the Miller Park Zoo in Bloomington. Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the agenda, we have a presentation on the Public Realm Summer Activation. Oops.
Go from here. Good evening, Steph McMahon, Economic Development. Tonight, I wanted to come to you with an update on work we've been doing since the Public Realm Study. The Economic Development team has been meeting regularly to discuss the implementation of the Downtown Public Realm Study, which we shared with Council in March of this year. As you may recall, the study suggested that the city roll out quicker, lighter, cheaper projects to gauge the response of the community before investing in permanent changes. Community development staff, along with Tim Cowan from Public Works, have been working on concepts and are glad to share them with you tonight. These were some of the big ideas from the Public Realm Study that we are using as our guide. Considering public spaces that were mentioned in the study and those that are currently available in the downtown, which could have the greatest initial impact, our team reached out to the Urbana Free Library to discuss the possibility of activating the 2 lots owned by the library on the north and southwest corners of the intersection of Green and Ray Streets. Library staff is supportive of the initiative and the concepts you will see tonight. So this is just a map of the north lot that we're going to talk about first. For the northwest lot, where the Races sculpture currently resides and would be relocated, staff is proposing to install a container stage on the lot that would be customized for small performances, such as live music, poetry readings, puppet shows, etc. A call for artists would be conducted to select an artist to paint the container, so it would also serve as an art piece for the corner. Benches for a small audience would be built using repurposed wood from the Landscape Recycling Center. We'd also have available a couple of foldable chairs, and the public would be invited to bring lawn chairs for additional seating. These are just some concept pictures. We would also propose to install 3 of the Curbanas on that corner on the lot with cafe tables and chairs so that people could share a drink or meal while watching a performance or enjoying the outdoor space. An electrical panel would be installed so that power would be available to the stage for lighting, instruments, or amplification. Power would also be available for pop-up vendors or ambient lighting. Library staff, and this is kind of our inspiration picture that we're using to guide us a little bit. Library staff have expressed enthusiasm for activating the space with small events, and Vivian Kristian, our art specialist, would also be planning small events. This is a concept drawing from somebody who doesn't do maps online, me. I got out the graph paper and the sticky notes, so, but sometimes that's quicker and easier, right? But they can be moved around very easily. So that just gives you an idea of how the layout would be based on the square footage we have available. So it does all fit. For the southwest, the proposed budget for the north lot is currently under $100,000, and funds were budgeted out of TIF in fiscal year 23 and carried forward into 24. Once installed, staff will set in place a plan to monitor and collect data on the usage of the lot, consider changes, and depending on the results, may in the future bring a proposal to council for more permanent changes. That would be if everything was used well and the library was on board and we all liked this idea. If we don't like this idea, everything we're proposing could be moved off and tried somewhere else except the electricity. By adding a small event space on this corner, the city would be building upon the live music performance corridor along Race Street and creating civic gathering green space, two of the big ideas identified in the study. So moving on to the southwest lot, which neighbors Cunningham Township, we're working on a proposal that would cooperate with the raised gardens that the township currently plants and maintains. We are considering outdoor seating that would welcome couples to custom-built picnic tables for two, traditional four-person tables, and a special long table that would encourage groups of up to 16 people to come together in fellowship. Durable outdoor games would be installed and a chess or checkerboards painted on the picnic tables. We're especially excited to share the concept for a large installation that includes benches, swing, and 8-foot-tall letters spelling Urbana. This piece would serve as a great photo setting and would also welcome guests to Hotel Royer and university students traveling Green Street. For activating this piece year-round, we would propose decorating it seasonally, changing the colors of spotlights for special events such as orange and blue for U of I, rainbow colors for Pride, holiday colors. We would look for ways to change it up periodically so people would have reason to come back and take pictures that we would, of course, hashtag and put on social media. Here again is my nice layout of the south lot. We'll get some pretty drawings for you if we move forward. Staff has also been reviewing the site that houses the Urbana's Market at the Square to see what might be done to update the event space following our quicker, lighter, cheaper concepts. All ideas are being shared with Jim Webster as he currently holds the lease on the parking lot. Plans are moving forward to install one of the Curbanas on the east side of the market, which will host additional space for patrons to sit, eat, and drink. Other ideas being investigated include new, more durable banners, which would help define the market space. And this isn't the design of new banners, it's an old concept, but we're looking into new designs that wouldn't blow off so easily and would last longer. And finally, staff has applied for a $25,000 Bloomberg grant to install a 24-foot by 205-foot asphalt mural on the north row of the market. So that's where this is. And if awarded the grant this fall, the mural would be installed as a community-wide project in the spring of 2024. Staff is working to implement the ideas shared with you this evening. We hope it's some of the items to be installed in 2023, while others may not happen until next year. We had lofty goals of implementing by July, but details got in the way, and we want to make sure it's going to be right before we install it, and wanted to get your feedback. Moving forward, our team will continue to use the public realm study as a guide to propose more outdoor seating and gathering and activation spaces. And while I'm here, I wanted to just give you an update on the arts program, some feedback of what's happening there. The program is gaining momentum with the hiring of our new program specialist, Vivian Kristian, in March, and the agreement with 40 North. Vivian has been administering arts grants for their successful implementation and is working with area partners on continued programming and the development of new workshops and events. She facilitated the Urbana Arts and Culture Advisory Board, is serving on the Public Realm Implementation Committee. She's the one who applied for the asphalt grant for us, collaborating with the Urbana Free Library on exhibits, and coordinating new events such as the free Julius Caesar at the Boneyard event that was held last Friday. Vivian is researching a mural to cover graffiti in Boneyard Creek, has created a weekly e-newsletter, is promoting Urbana via social media and is also developing a full list of events in Urbana that will be housed on the city website under the public events calendar. Vivian is also working closely with 40 North on our new partnership. 40 North Director Kelly White has worked on several projects this year, including Culture Fest as part of the Boneyard Arts Festival, Lake House Candlelight Serenade, the Great Outdoors, which is yet to be installed this month, Sky Gallery, which includes 4 Urbana billboards showcasing local art, and the Crystal Lake Art Fair, which will be held on August 5th. Plans are also underway in collaboration to replace 2 murals on glass. Some of them have been up for over 12 years. Install 2 new utility box murals, as well as a new Art and Transit second bus shelter. 40 North is researching potential sites for murals for the African American Heritage Trail and will facilitate a public art installation of block eyes painted by local artists, and several of those will be in Urbana this year. A survey is being developed to gather feedback from local artists so that workshops can be developed with training and support. Plans are being made for monthly downtown events, with one on Saturday, October 7th called Fall Fusion, being a larger family event. When proposing the agreement with 40 North, Kelly was very upfront and shared with us that she didn't have the capacity to take on additional new projects without hiring assistance. Circumstances delayed the hiring, but Elsie Hedgespeth, who worked at the Urbana Parks District, has been hired on at 40 North, and she started June 26th. So because of that delay, Kelly and I agreed we should update that contract to start July 1. So it will officially be a July 1 update. And so I'll send you guys a copy of this report because I have a list of events that are happening, and as Vivian gets those updated, we'll be adding more and more to the list and the calendar to keep you updated. So I'm glad to hear any feedback you have for us on these activities.
Any questions for Stephanie? Chris?
Well, you know, my pet thing is murals. So do we have anybody selected to do the long asphalt mural yet? I mean, first of all, do we have the money? Did we get that grant?
We haven't heard yet if we've
Okay.
got it yet. We did receive, and I think Vivian did do a call for an artist on that. And there's a lot of other calls coming out for many other things that are going to be in the works. So I think an artist was selected, but I'm not sure who that was. I'd have to get that from her, but I can inform you.
You're not thinking about replacing that one glass-on mural on the south, on
that's-
the south. No, I'm kidding.
I don't think, I know they're looking at some that have been up for a while. Yeah. Maybe we'll get some new art.
Anything else? Yeah, Sharice.
I just want to say that I really think that your ideas are great. This was something that you guys presented to the library board, and I was super excited when you guys were talking about the stage and those things that we could use during the summer to have maybe some kind of itinerary of plays or outdoor performances. And I think it's a really good way to bring the community together and to, well, not just that, but just also involving the library in that way. I think we have a great library. So thanks for just all of your ideas. I just appreciate it so much.
And we're working with Township also. So we've talked to Danielle and what they're wanting to do at Township. So we would all be working together on this.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you so much. Very exciting stuff. All right, we will move on to new business. The first is, just kidding, we're going to move on to staff reports. Is there a staff report?
Just one thing, I wanted to let folks know that next Monday, the new Urbana Police Chief Larry Boone will begin work, and he will take his oath of office at the beginning of the city council meeting that night.
Thank you for that. Now, new business. First, we have ordinance number 2023-07-021, an ordinance revising the annual budget ordinance budget amendment number 9 omnibus. Allie is going to present for us.
All right. Good evening, everyone. So this is a budget amendment related to last year's budget, which is the fiscal year 23. So when we passed, or when the fiscal year 24 budget was approved, the fiscal year 2023 budget was amended to match the updated fiscal year 2023 estimates. So there are a couple of projects where estimates were incorrectly reduced, and that are causing large variances in actual to budget related to fiscal year 2023. So when a purchase order is issued, funds are encumbered. So the actual expenditure would include those encumbrances. So so what happened, there are a couple of projects where estimates were incorrectly reduced due to misunderstanding of the timing of budgeting for those encumbrances. So these projects are listed in the detail on the exhibit, but the ones that I would like to point out, one is related to the city facilities project, which is about $800,000 difference between the actual versus what the fiscal year 2023 revised budget. And then the other one is related to the Elias rehabilitation project, which is related to the reimbursement grant that the city received in fiscal year 2023. So that's about $3 million of variance. So again, these changes are just a matter of timing of the expenditures. And so when we amend the fiscal year 2024 budget, those line items related to these projects will be reduced. So I think that's it. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Grace.
A small one, which I appreciate you explaining those, but I'm still going to make sure I'm understanding this one. With the grant for the ILES building, so that one's a little different, right? Because the other ones, it's that we had higher expenditures in 23, so 24 budget will be reduced accordingly, except for this one, right? This grant, that $3 million doesn't reduce our 24 budget unless the grant was included there, right?
Yes, I would have to look at it if I can't remember on top of my head, but if that isn't included in the fiscal year 2024's budget, then we won't reduce that. But if it is, then we will reduce that to reflect this change.
Okay, but it's just a matter of when we account for the grant. It's not city money.
Yeah, so it's a pass-through. Right? It's just a pass-through.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other discussion or a motion?
I'll move approval of ordinance number 2023-07-021, and ordinance revising the annual budget ordinance, budget amendment number 9, omnibus, onto city council for approval on the consent agenda.
Second.
Oh, it can't be on the consent agenda. I'm sorry. It's a budget.
Is there?
Second.
Thank you, Sharice. It's been moved by Chandra and seconded by Sharice to move ordinance number 2023-07-021, an ordinance revising the annual budget ordinance, budget amendment number 9, omnibus, on to city council with a recommendation for approval. Any further discussion? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Ms. Hersey?
Yes.
Ms. Colacetti?
Yes.
Ms. Bishop?
Yes.
Ms. Wilkin?
Yes.
That motion passes. Next, we have resolution number 2023-07-074R, a resolution authorizing city intervention in pending property tax assessment appeals before the Illinois Property Tax Appeal Board, Hampton Inn PTAB, docket number 2022-023263, sorry, Executive Carol.
Thank you. I'm going to speak to the next three resolutions as a package because I wrote a single memo for this. We are notified regularly when a property owner requests a reduction in assessed value of more than $100,000, and we follow that through the Board of Review, and on those rare occasions and we will intervene when we think it's appropriate. And on those rare occasions when a property owner wants to take it to the next step and go to PTAB, then we have to formally get a resolution from the council to allow us to intervene in those cases. And so there's 3 cases that we're asking, and each one has its own resolution. One is for Hampton Inn, 1200 West University Avenue. One's for Hunsinger Enterprises, 604 West Elm, and Willowbrook, which is 1601 through 1605 Willow Road.
Chris.
Carol, is it premature to ask why we're opposing that, or is that
No,
for,
I
that
have,
for
I
court
have a little
later?
thumbnail I can give you on each one if you would like.
If it's a very small thumbnail, yeah.
Very small, yes, very small. So in the case of Hampton Inn, they have an appraisal. That appraisal has basically stabilized and projected a lower level of income that reflects the pandemic and doesn't really reflect recovery from the pandemic. And we think that's inappropriate, especially since we've seen the rebound in hotel motel revenues. So that's the story behind the Hampton. Hunsinger Enterprises is a kind of a quirky situation where there are 2 buildings on a single lot. One of the buildings is an old house, and then they built a much larger, much more modern apartment building behind, and they're really trying to use the older house to set the value when the value is really being driven by this larger, more modern apartment building. And then Willowbrook is actually a real anomaly. We had a stipulation where basically we agree, the property owner and the city will stipulate to a value, and we did that, and it was a lower value than the assessed value, but for some reason, the Board of Review did not accept it, and so they kept the assessment where it is. So in that case, we're actually seeking to just bolster submit the stipulation and say, in that case, we actually agree with the property owner. We're just trying to be fair. So in that case, we just want to support the property owner's position because we did that through the stipulation.
Any further discussion? Grace.
Thank you. And then I was wondering if you could just, this may be implied, but if you could just clarify that intervening in these is in opposition to their appeal in support of the assessed value or the assessor's office or whatever was determined. Is
That's
that right?
typically why we go, Willowbrook is an exception for the reason I just explained.
Thank you. And then I had a question about also the request for extension of time to submit evidence. I don't know if that was a standard thing or if this had just come about or.
It's standard. According to the lawyer here, it's standard.
Do you know if we plan to seek an extension or if you're going with the planned appeals process schedule?
As part of the process, the PTAB always allows for extensions of time to submit documentation and appeal. Part of the idea, I think, ultimately is there needs to be some internal discussion about, is it worthy for us to actually intervene at that particular level too, depending on what the circumstances are. And so because of that time and what the time requirement is to actually submit the documentation, typically we always ask for the extension. Just gives us a lot more room to get our stuff prepared and submitted in terms of our response on the idea of what the reduction sought is.
But this time you don't have plans for requesting an extension?
No, it's part of it, yes.
Oh, it is
And part of it was too also in terms of timing of actually getting the resolution passed and adopted to submit to them, showing that there's been formal council action to approve intervention, that's part of also the request for the extension is that was part of this planning of, missing a few meetings this month and trying to get everything to them that's actually required is letting them know, hey, this was what the process was. So we need an extension of time to submit all of our stuff and then,
Thank you. And one more for Dave, if you don't mind. Do you plan, or is it too early to tell if you plan on bringing in outside counsel?
Typically on these, I have not ever understood that Urbana has sought outside counsel to actually do these. All the ones that have actually come in the recent history I've been involved in with Carol and Ross McNeil and the idea of the preparation of all the stuff that goes into these. So,
Great. Thank you. Just asking because it's one of the other things we're authorizing.
Any further discussion? Or is there a motion?
Do we omnibus first?
Omnibus sounds lovely.
I can try. I move to omnibus and then read them all. Is that right? Okay, I will move to combine in omnibus fashion Resolution 2023-07-074R, resolution authorizing city intervention in pending property tax assessment appeals before the Illinois Property Tax Appeal Board, Hampton Inn, PTAB docket number 2022-02633. Also, resolution number 2023-07-075R, a resolution authorizing city intervention in pending property tax assessment before the Illinois Property Tax Board of Appeal for Hunsinger Enterprises, PTAB docket 2022-02834, and also resolution number 2023-07-076R, resolution authorizing city intervention in pending property tax assessment appeals before the Illinois Property Tax Appeal Board for Willowbrook, PTAB docket number 2022-02875.
A motion to omnibus those three items. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved by Grace, seconded by Chandra. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Hersey?
Yes.
Ms. Colacetti?
Yes.
Ms. Bishop?
Yes.
Wilkin?
Yes.
That motion passes. Is there a movement on the omnibus?
So I'll move approval of the omnibus onto City Council for approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
Yes, we'll put it on the consent agenda.
And second again.
All right. It's been moved by Chandra and seconded by Sharice to move this omnibus item on to City Council with a recommendation for approval. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Ms. Hersey?
Yes.
Ms. Colacetti?
Yes.
Ms. Bishop?
Yes.
Ms. Wilkin?
Yes.
That motion passes. Next, we have resolution number 2023-07-077R, a resolution approving and authorizing the execution of an Urbana Home Consortium subrecipient agreement, CU at Home LLC, Men's Non-Congregate Mid-Barrier Shelter Home ARP FY 2021/2022, and Braden's going to present on this for us.
Good evening, everyone. I am pleased and excited to present to you tonight a resolution approving and authorizing the execution of an Urbana Home Consortium subrecipient agreement with CU at Home. This proposed agreement will allocate $250,000 from fiscal year 2021 home ARP funding to CU at Home for the purchase of 410 West Springfield Avenue in Urbana. Of that $250,000, $220,000 will be used for the purchase price of the address, and $30,000 will be used to cover the cost of planning, moving, and repairs to the structure. This unit at 410 West Springfield is zoned B2, which does allow transitional housing by right, which is the reason that staff did not believe it was appropriate or necessary to have public hearings, because again, transitional housing is allowed by right in B2 zoning in that neighborhood. I want to also acknowledge that Melissa Courtwright, the Executive Director of CU at Home, is here tonight, and I'll keep my comments brief so that you all will have an opportunity to ask her questions about her program specifically if you would like to. I'll just briefly highlight what the program will look like at this location. Clients that are enrolled in CU at Home's Mid-Barrier Shelter program must maintain or be working toward sobriety and must agree to intensive case management. This is not an emergency shelter like the Strides model. Again, this is more of a transitional mid-barrier arrangement for these clients. The shelter has the capacity to house 8 men, eight clients at this location in a safe and supportive non-congregate setting, meaning each client will have space and privacy rather than the congregate shelter setting. And again, Melissa Courtwright can provide a little bit more information about what that program looks like. I just also wanted to highlight, I think there are some misconceptions often about the type of clients that are in these projects, that are seeking shelter or that need supportive services in order to maintain housing and maintain stability and work toward the ultimate goal of achieving independent living in our community. A fact that was just published in United Way's 2023 community report talking about housing and homelessness in our community. Just a fact that I think is very important to keep in mind is that a minimum wage worker in Champaign County has to work 73 hours a week in order to afford rent and utilities in our community. And the number one call that 211 receives in our county is for help with housing. So this is a very critical need that we are facing. And again, many of these clients are individuals who are working, in order to sustain independent living as the ultimate goal. I also just wanted to provide some context on this project. City staff have been working with See You at Home since December 2022 on this proposal. See You at Home initially applied for home ARP funding for the purchase of a non-congregate shelter as part of the City of Urbana and City of Champaign's Housing and Homeless Innovations grant program that we launched back in the fall of last year. At the time, back in December, the Grant Review Committee, which was made up of staff from Urbana and also staff from Champaign, were supportive of See You at Home's mid-barrier model because it's a gap that we see in the community. There are individuals who, a congregate shelter like Strides is not the most appropriate environment. There are people who really are working toward stability and sobriety, and they really want to take that next step to independent living. So we've known that this mid-barrier, more transitional model is a huge gap in our community. So at the time, back in December, when See You at Home originally applied for funding, the committee was supportive. However, we postponed funding them at that time because they didn't have an address selected for purchase. So the committee agreed to work with See You at Home and committed to funding them in the event that they found an address for purchase, which once they were able to identify an address, we followed through with that commitment. So we've been working together for many months on this. However, where we stand right now, there are some time constraints, and Melissa Courtwright can speak a little bit more to this to the specifics of it. But there are time constraints with the clients that See You at Home currently has. And if this proposal does not move forward or if it is delayed, there is a likelihood that their services could be impacted and that the clients that they're currently housing would not have shelter or that the services would be impacted, which is something that we think would be very unfortunate in our community. So there is a time component to this proposal. They hope to be moving in shortly within the next month in order to ensure that their clients don't have interruption in services. Another point that I just wanted to touch on is long-term sustainability. As Danielle Chenoweth mentioned in her comment, there are a lot of agencies that are working together and supporting this proposal in our community. In addition to the City of Urbana, Cunningham Township has been a very strong partner in this. And again, in terms of long-term sustainability, See You at Home will have that support in our community to ensure that this project is managed successfully and that the clients have all of the resources that they need. Again, and then to reiterate, the zoning for this unit, by right, See You at Home will have the ability to operate a transitional shelter based on the zoning. See You at Home, though, will have the responsibility to ensure that it is managed well and that they are good neighbors in their community, which I know from my conversations with Melissa and her staff, I know they are committed to, and we have every confidence that they are able to do that. So those are my comments. Again, I can open it up for questions, and if you have more program-specific questions, I would invite Melissa to come up and be able to provide some answers for that.
I saw Sharice's hand first.
Could you define non-congregate shelter for me?
Yeah, so a traditional emergency shelter where someone can show up if they, need a bed for the night. If you think of, Strides or the 70 East Washington location, what used to be known as the Times Center in Champaign, kind of a big room with bunk beds. That's a congregate shelter, so everyone is essentially sleeping in the same space. They're using shared bathrooms, shared facilities, and things like that. A non-congregate shelter is a model where clients have privacy. Essentially, they have their own room, or maybe they're only sharing a room with one other client, but they have more privacy, which studies have shown really helps with maintaining stability, maintaining housing, especially for more of that transitional period of time. So typically emergency shelters are a very short-term intervention. You might be there for a night, a couple nights. Non-congregate shelters are a little bit more conducive to, again, if someone's working on their sobriety, if they're, maybe working 2 jobs, they really want to get a lease on their own, they just need some time to get some stability and to get some, again, the wraparound services that are provided, job training, financial literacy, things of that nature, just to ensure that when they leave the transitional phase, they are able to maintain housing permanently. So again, non-congregate, meaning the clients aren't all in one big room together. They have more of that private space.
So when they're in this non-congregate setting, I guess my question is, they are in kind of a transitional period based on maybe they're underemployed and they just lost their spot or their space, and they need to save money to save up for another space, or they're in sobriety, or they're getting some kind of job training and getting ready to transition. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, Melissa, feel free to chime in. She could provide more details on.
Yeah, I just want to understand it. So so the thing is also is that they're because they're transitioning. What's the average stay that they would be in this particular setting?
I'm sorry, can you say that last part again?
I was just wondering what is the average stay? Like, are they there for months, maybe even a year or so? Is it more trying to help them transition, and it may take more than 120 days, which is I think like the average that some financial services or whatever only allow and stuff. I just want to understand.
Yes, so our program is an average of 12 to 18 months. And so the idea is that while clients are staying with us, we're trying to assist them with any instability points they may have. And that's, as we mentioned, could be around income, education, employment. It could be mental health, sobriety. We also help clients address physical health issues because that's something that often goes unaddressed when you're experiencing homelessness. So it's every instability point that client brings to the table when they walk through the door. We try to help them address that in the time that they're with us.
Okay, thanks.
Chris?
I kind of want to go over the timeline. The first that I knew that the spaceship was landing at 410 West Springfield was July 13th. So my first question is, when was this residence selected?
So it was selected. I mean, I'm trying to remember when we went to so many houses and we've looked at so many different locations trying to select the right place. So I think it was probably sometime in June where we first went to look at the property, and then reached back out to the city of Urbana, letting them know that we had found a site. Our goal was to try to put an offer in or make it known that we wanted the property as soon as possible, because many other sites that we had looked at had sold very quickly. And so we wanted to try to make it happen as fast as possible. Braden mentioned time constraint for us, so we are leasing a part of the 70 East Washington building from the Stride Center. Our men are still currently there in that space. And so for the safety of the Strides clients who need more space and for our clients to have their own space, we have a time constraint that we're under.
Well, my top priority, as is yours, is these homeless men.
Yeah.
But for them to be successful, they need to be accepted by the neighborhood. And the neighborhood has been taken by surprise, as I think you've heard tonight. And so, I have lots and lots of questions, as do they. And so, I will tell you, I would rather move this back to committee, although we are in committee. But I would like to allow for the neighborhood to have a community meeting with you so you could address their concerns and questions. Would you be willing to do that?
I'd absolutely be willing to do that, but again, the delay would interrupt services with the client.
Well, we would try to go as fast as possible.
Yeah.
But I really think we need a meeting with the neighborhood. I think it's critical for the sustainability and long-term health of that neighborhood, that everybody's on the same page and knows what's going on. And there are, as Sarah Nixon pointed out, there are a lot of misconceptions as to who you're attracting to the neighborhood. And so we need to get that taken care of, and also to talk about what is the living situation, and who, you got 2 staff living there, and what is their role, and are we going to be smoking cigarettes in the backyard or in the front yard? These kind of specifics are going to be needed to be looked at. I'm completely for this kind of thing, but I owe it to the neighborhood to make sure that they're okay with it. You understand that, of course, right?
Yeah,
absolutely. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and right now. Is there more questions? Okay, I'll sit aside here.
Questions, yeah. Grace. Thank you. A few questions for Melissa.
Yes.
All right, while you're up here. About the caseworkers, just a small one. I was wondering if the caseworkers plan to live in the house or be there 24/7, or what that arrangement is?
Yeah, so the house is staffed 24/7, and we have a mix of case managers and what we call our life skills staff. And between the 2 different departments, the house will always be staffed.
And is this the program you're already operating? You said in Strides. Was it like upstairs or a part of that building? But you're already operating this program. This is an outside space that's needed. Is that right?
Yes, yeah, we're already operating the program. We're just looking for a space to operate the program in, again, that is non-congregate. And, we have looked again for a long time, and now we finally found a place.
And then one more concern, people have brought up a bit about the proximity to the Philpotts Center. And I'm not an expert in this topic, but I didn't know if that's considered a school or park distance for requirements for, in the off chance that any of your clients were on a registered sex offender list, if this is away from proximities to school, parks, other requirements that would apply to anyone, whether they're a millionaire and they buy this house outright, that would still apply.
So we have designated another site for registered sex offenders who may be staying with us. So we have advanced shelters in the home, or in the community, sorry, and we've designated one of those sites. So registered sex offenders will not be staying in this house.
Great, thank you. I had a few more, unless others have some to circle to. If
Other
I may.
questions? Okay, Grace, go ahead and continue.
Yeah, some other ones were probably for Braden, but you can decide how to answer. So I'm trying to understand the situation here too, because See You at Home can buy this property on their own, or maybe already has. Money aside, if you had the money, you could buy this on your own and operate it however they want within the confines of the law. And what we're here tonight for Committee of the Whole is for the home ARP money, not allowing the project in the first place because this is allowed by right. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. We've decided that they wanted to have the funding secured before moving before purchasing, just in order to be cautious and ensure that it's successful in the event that they were to buy it and then for some reason the funding wasn't approved. We just didn't want to end up in that situation, if that makes sense.
Yes, makes sense. Yeah, I just wanted to clarify a little bit about the question before us tonight is about the money, which is indirectly related to supporting the project, but this is not, we're not voting on whether we allow this in this location. This is already allowed by right. That's not what we're deciding on here in council. A few other quick questions for Braden about money. Could we use CDBG money, and do we still have CDBG money we need to spend?
Our current CDBG allocation for public services is allocated, so we don't currently have that funding available. We do have a very sizable home funds available, which long-term could be an option for this. CDBG is trickier because, again, we're capped in terms of how much we can spend on public services, and anything related to housing is considered a public service by HUD. So we just kind of have that constraint of, not really having that funding readily available.
And even the purchase of real property is considered social services?
I would need to look into that. It's possible. Again, at this stage with our current allocation with CDBG, because we had that timeliness issue, we were able to kind of get everything covered and get everything allocated. So we wouldn't, for this fiscal year, have that available because it's been budgeted already. This home ARP funding is very unique because there's a specific allocation for the purchase of non-congregate shelter, which is a very kind of specific lane. So we have $400,000 total that we can utilize to that. So this would be a part of that. We'd still have some of that funding left over. So that was really, why we determined to take it from this allocation, was because we specifically had a set aside for non-congregate shelter.
Thank you. That was already answered my next question. And last one is, we mentioned in the contract from some of our emails and public input about inclusive language for the clients. I saw for employment of non-discrimination, and I didn't know if it was already in there or if we could add some non-discrimination language as far as clients as well.
Yes, so Section 4, subsection A is the non-discrimination and equal opportunity language currently in there. I did receive the comment from Danielle Chenoweth, and that will be included as well in any final agreement.
Because that just reads for employment as is now, right?
Right. So that will need to be added, but yes.
For employment and clients.
Correct.
Being served. Okay. Thank you.
Any further discussion, or is there a motion?
I'd like to make a motion that this be sent to, I guess, the next council meeting to give time to schedule a community meeting.
To clarify, are you recommending it stays in the committee of the whole?
Yeah, it stays in the community of the whole, yeah.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Chris and seconded by Grace to keep this in committee of the whole. Is there any further discussion?
Again, this would be just so we can have a meeting with the neighbors and answer their questions and their comments and their concerns, which would mean I would need the help of community development to create flyers, schedule something at the Philpotts Recreation Center, because that would be the ideal location, as soon as possible. And because I don't want, I don't want to hold you up any more than necessary.
Our lease at the 70 East Washington shelter ends the end of August.
End of August, okay.
So
All right.
And we've had discussions, and I understand they're not going to be able to extend that lease, and so.
Okay, well, we'll do the giddy up. I'll be on the ground passing out flyers as much as possible, but whatever we can do, Braden,
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
And I completely, and I'll absolutely help facilitate that. And then just for transparency, to just state, to say I did, that in the event that the property is put back on the market, it could very easily be sold relatively quickly, which would mean this project would not be able to move forward, but that is just a reality of the situation. But yes, I'll certainly help schedule that as quickly as possible.
Okay, thank you.
Chandra, did you have a comment?
Well, I was just going to ask about the purchasing of the property in that timeline. And I mean, we know the housing market currently and things get snatched up fast. Like, are you in talks with the seller? And like, how will this delay impact, buying that property or closing on that property?
We've already extended the contract one time, and so I think at this point with another extension, there may be a possibility that he would put it back on the market, and then we would have no control over what would happen after that, and that's been our unfortunate experience, is that as we've looked at different houses that may work, there's been sometimes reasons that they wouldn't, but the ones that would oftentimes would sell before we could move through the process.
Okay, thank you.
Grace?
Thank you. I seconded keeping it in COW just to facilitate the discussion, gauge other people's interests. Although upon hearing more about it, I think I'm actually in support of doing both, authorizing the funds now and holding public engagement meetings to address questions and concerns about the operations, because I think this situation is a little different, again, because we're not being asked if it's allowable. It is allowable by right. And I hear sentiments about it feeling like it's being rushed, and I can definitely sympathize with that. That overall, this has been a need and a goal for a long time in the community. This did not come out of nowhere. This has been in our goals for years. It's not a new thing pulled out of the blue. This specific location is the opportunity that's just recently come up. And I agree, I as well in council just found out about it when it's publicly available. So I can understand feeling like it's a rush with this particular address, but also just wanted to reiterate that this idea is not a rush and this program is already operating and not a rushed thing. And that this will have to follow all the rules and regulations of the state and the city, just like anyone else who would purchase the house. They are allowed to own and operate this as a shelter by right, and it's not up to the council whether we allow them to operate there. The only question here is about contributing funds. There's some rights that people have when they live in a community, like we were mentioned, if people are going to be smoking in the yard or hanging out, and honestly, that's what people are allowed to do in their residence, and it's not the business of their neighbors. They might be inconvenienced by it, but a millionaire could buy that house and invite over a whole bunch of friends and be smoking and hanging out in the yard, and they're allowed to do that by right. And it's different, I think, because of the perception, because it's people who are in need of housing. So I'm in support of this project and supporting it with home ARP funds. I'm not going to be swayed by not in my backyard concerns that are based on preconceived ideas. I do support the time and the opportunity for the neighborhood to have their questions expressed and answered. And I think that could go, hopefully, along with the approval, because the operations and those kinds of details could still be addressed and expressed to the community. So I think I'm in support of moving this along with also the understanding that there will hopefully be more opportunities to work with the community.
Sharice, would you take the chair for me?
Yes, I will take the chair for you, Jaya, and the chair recognizes Jaya Colasetti.
Thank you. I will say that I will not be voting to keep this in committee of the whole. I think this is a community resource that is desperately needed. The conversation around homeless services in this community, it's unbelievable the need that we have. And so hearing two different cases tonight that are coming from, to council that we're being asked to discuss, obviously they're totally different, they're totally separate, but that's because the need is so great, right? We're doing these incremental bit by bit just to try to give people a chance. So many people in our community don't have that opportunity. They do not make enough to live in the housing that is available in our community. So while we can work on creating more affordable housing, while we can work on addressing folks who are vulnerable in many different ways, I think it's really important that as we look at what resources are available to us, we think about what our values are. And for me, Urbana is a community that cares about folks who are vulnerable, that cares about making sure that people have basic dignity and access to the resources that they need. And yeah, I didn't know this was happening, but I'm glad it's happening. I think it's important that it's happening. We have a responsibility for the fellow residents in our community, and I will gladly be moving this forward to City Council for approval. That's it. And I will take the chair back if I can have it.
Jaya, you may have your chair back.
Thank you.
And
Sharice, yes.
there we go. And I just want to say that what I do wish too, with not just with our staff and our council, but also the community, is that maybe one of the things we, not as a whole, but individually need to consider is the rent burden issue that we have is based a lot too on the fact that there is a statewide ban on rent control and legislatively, and maybe we need to hound those folks up in Springfield about that. Having lived in rent-controlled situations when I was living in California, that goes a long way to keep people out of the homeless situation, being homeless, including myself. So I think we need to lobby and bug and troll our state legislators regarding rent control in the state of Illinois. And I think that would be only to the benefit of those of our citizens that are having a difficult time finding enough employment to be able to pay for a roof over their head. So I just wanted to add that.
Any further discussion? We have a motion to keep this in the committee of the whole that has been seconded. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Ms. Hersey?
No.
Ms. Colacetti?
No.
Ms. Bishop?
No.
Ms. Wilking?
No.
That motion fails. So I would entertain another motion on this resolution.
I'll move resolution number 2023-07-077R, resolution approving and authorizing execution of Urbana Home Consortium Subrecipient Agreement, CU at Home LLC, Men's Non-Congregate Mid-Barrier Shelter Home ARP FY 2021/2022 to City Council for approval on the regular agenda.
Second.
Moved by Grace, seconded by Chandra, and this is a resolution actually, so we can just do a voice vote, right? Because it's a resolution, we actually can just do a voice vote, right? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Thank you. All right, next we have ordinance number 2023-07-022, an ordinance amending a redevelopment agreement with Icon Hospitality LLC. I think Steph is coming back up.
Hang on. Hello, Steph McMahon again. You're fine. Okay, sorry. Just pull up a few more chairs, guys. Tonight I'm bringing to you an ordinance amending a redevelopment agreement with Icon Hospitality. Background for this is while continued progress is being made on the renovation of the Hotel Royer, the ongoing impact of the pandemic has led the developer, Icon Hospitality, to request a second extension of the project occupancy date of the hotel, as defined by the redevelopment agreement, from August 31st, 2023 to February 29th, 2024. This would be the third amendment of the original redevelopment agreement. The ongoing supply chain disruptions due to the pandemic and lengthened lead times for materials and equipment continue to be an issue, thereby bringing upon this request. The original redevelopment agreement for the former Landmark Hotel was passed in June of 2019 between the City of Urbana and Markson's affiliates. This agreement outlined the city's investment of $5.5 million in the project via bond issuance upon the developer obtaining the following: a certificate of occupancy for the hotel and restaurant, final approval for the property to be operated and maintained as a Hilton Tapestry brand hotel, and equity or permanent debt financing for the balance of the cost of the project. Revenue to pay the bond for the hotel investment would be realized through tax increment from the increased assessed value in the renovated property, food and beverage taxes, hotel motel taxes, and a new boutique hotel tax. In 2020, Icon Hospitality requested a one-year extension from the original commencement date to July 1, 2021, with a corresponding extension of the 18-month project timeline to completion. Due to the unforeseen circumstances that arose with the pandemic and subsequent shelter-in-place orders, the council agreed that this extension was well-founded and passed the ordinance to amend the agreement on November 2nd, 2020. This ordinance also acknowledged an assignment of the agreement from Marksons to Icon Hospitality. In 2022, Icon Hospitality requested an additional 8-month extension of the 18-month project timeline to completion, extending the project occupancy date to August 31st, 2023. The council agreed that this extension was well-founded and passed the ordinance to amend the agreement on November 21st, 2022. Renovation work on the Hotel Royer has been steady since the commencement of work in July of 2021. Exterior work is now complete, and work is focused on the interior finishes. The guest rooms are at various stages of completion, with many rooms fully furnished and awaiting completion of punch list items. Concrete work in the pool area is complete. Wallpaper and carpeting is being installed in the meeting spaces. Key managerial and sales positions within the hotel have been filled to start marketing and selling the convention space and rooms for large events. The many other positions needed to run the day-to-day operations of the hotel will not be filled until closer to opening. The Hotel Royer is being advertised on the Hilton website with a starting date of reservations of November 28th, 2023. The redevelopment project has already resulted in the most significant renovation this historic property has seen in over 37 years. The developers are returning the property to its highest and best use, which will generate new tax revenues, bring visitors and commerce to the downtown area, and restore this iconic and historic building in the heart of downtown Urbana. Council members were provided tours of the Hotel Royer on Friday, June 30th. The tours were staggered to comply with the Open Meetings Act restrictions. Staff also requested feedback from council members as to their level of support for extending the redevelopment agreement again. The feedback ranged from general support for the requested extension to limiting the extension and/or reducing the incentive in exchange for a more prolonged extension. The draft text of the third amendment to the redevelopment agreement, which is attached, includes the extension date as requested by the developer. This date was supported by most council members. Based on additional feedback from council members, the council may want to consider adding language that would diminish the incentive in the event that the deadline is missed. For example, for any portion of each month beyond February 29th, 2024, that the project occupancy date occurs, a reimbursement amount could be reduced by a set amount. Staff recommends that an extension of the project occupancy date be granted until February 29th, 2024. Staff also recommends that a predetermined reduction in the incentive be built into the agreement so that the developer understands precisely what is at stake by missing the project occupancy date. And we have members of the Icon Hospitality staff or ownership here, so I'll ask them to introduce themselves, and we're all available to answer any questions you have.
Can I ask folks who are going to stay up here to sit down too so that people behind can see? Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Joseph Pryor. I'm the Corporate Director of Operations and Development for Icon Hospitality and Marquee Ventures.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Haris Pervez. I'm with the ownership at Icon Hospitality.
Good evening. I'm Pervez Usman. I'm the CEO of the company, and I'm with the Icon and the Marquee Ventures for this project here.
And with us we have the rest of our team. We have Tony Nabhan, who is our general manager at the Hotel Royer Tapestry Collection by Hilton. We have Rose Gag, who is our Director of Sales.
We have Morgan Williams, who's our Sales and Catering Manager, and we have Elizabeth Mooney, our Sales Manager.
So we have a fully staffed team and are very eager to open this hotel. Today I stand before you on behalf of Icon Hospitality to address the issue of the delay in the development of the Hotel Royer Tapestry Collection by Hilton. As a developer of the hotel that has spent over 4 years working on this project, from planning to construction, no one is as committed and concerned ensuring the project reaches completion as we are. Every day that passes without the opening of the hotel causes increased cost burden on the developer, from interest charges, payroll costs, increased construction costs, property tax, insurance, and a myriad of other expenses, and all without revenue coming into the hotel. The development of this hotel has progressed rapidly despite numerous hurdles that were unknown to us at the onset of the project and could not have been accounted for during the pre-construction phase. The COVID-19 pandemic has created supply chain and labor shortages that are unlike ever seen before. The nature of a 100-year-old historic property is such that numerous challenges need to be addressed to upgrade a property to such an extensive extent. The development agreement is structured such that the TIF funds is a minor portion of the total cost and will only be provided on the opening of the hotel, and as such, the developer is bearing the burden of the project. This project was extremely challenging and required our team's full attention and efforts. Multiple other developers have failed or refused to dive into this project due to the scope of restoring a historic 100-year-old hotel. There were numerous unforeseen hurdles with the property and supply chain labor issues that have made the situation even more difficult. For example, the property spans 2 buildings, one that was built in the 1920s and one that was built in the 1980s. The hotel has 131 guest rooms with 35 different room types. A typical hotel would have 6 to 8 room types. And also the hotel has over 8,000 square feet of meeting space, a full fitness center, a full swimming pool, a restaurant, and a bar. Our team has invested considerable time, energy, and funds to ensure that this project reaches completion. We remain committed to completing this project as early as physically possible, as it costs us immense resources to not have the hotel open. We are transforming this hotel into a luxury upscale hotel that is unlike any other hotel in the country. Even Hilton's development team that oversees the development of thousands of hotels has commemorated this property on its beautiful design and historic nature. We feel that the language of a penalty provides additional hardship to the developer. As we all know, development projects like this can be complex undertakings influenced by a myriad of factors beyond the developer's control, especially when the property is such a historic building. Unforeseen challenges of supply chain disruptions, labor shortages can significantly impact the timeline of a project. In light of this, it is crucial for us to recognize the genuine efforts made by us as the developers and our commitment to completing the project successfully. By refraining from imposing penalties, the city demonstrates their support for the business community and encourages investment in Urbana. Penalizing the developer for circumstances beyond their control could create a disincentive for future investments, hindering economic growth and development. We encourage the city to focus on the development of this hotel and how this hotel can affect the community and create jobs, revitalize the local downtown economy, and enhance the city's infrastructure. In conclusion, I urge the city and the city council to exercise foresight, empathy, and pragmatism in this matter. Let us refrain from imposing harsh penalties and instead foster an environment of cooperation and understanding. By doing so, we can nurture a thriving business community and encourage a brighter future for the downtown of Urbana. We are near the finish line of this difficult project and appreciate the city's continued support. We thank everyone for their time.
Any questions? Chris?
Well, I don't have a question as much as a comment. I agree. I don't understand why we're doing this penalty crap. And my allegiance is with the workers. I go by that project every day, and I see how hard those crews are working on this building. And what you want is this building to be done right. That's what's going to sustain it for the long term. And for us to, we want it done by February. I mean, come on. this is a hard, you went through that building. This is a hard, difficult project. They are taking it back to the studs on just about every inch of that building. There's nothing like it. And Urbana is very lucky, extremely lucky, that a corporation has been willing to take it to this level, to invest this much money, and to bring it back, restore it, repair it, and make it better than it was. For us to get in a hurry and demand it get finished with penalties is, I don't know, it's rude and it's unproductive, and you got to be patient with these things. And when do you think you really could get it done and done right? I just want it done right, and I think you guys are doing that, and I appreciate the effort and investment you're making to do it. So, what if you did blow through that? And I don't want at the same time, say, well, we can wait 2 more years. I don't want it to just keep dragging it out forever at the same time. And I'm sure you don't either, because you want to start making money on this, right? I mean, so I don't know. What is your, I don't know, maybe you should comment on how realistic the February deadline that we've set for this.
We want to open tomorrow. We have invested money, and we are putting money and our efforts every single day. We are worn out. Look at our team, tired. Look at us, tired. It's not an easy project, and you know it, we know it. And realistically, this project is almost done. There are a few things which needs to be done, and we cannot open till city give us an occupancy permit. And when we will get it, we don't know. We need the extension, definitely. I'm giving you example, like we had a meeting last Monday. I was really sick, and I had an eye infection. I couldn't even drive. And I was driving to Urbana. My car got tire flat. By the time I got here, I was really sick. I was just sitting on the floor. Joseph came, you look really sick. What is happening? Pervez, are you really, really sick? I said, I'm tired, but I will make sure I will get this project done. This project is almost 90% done. And what we are asking as a developer, we have not even put our investment, we have put our health also here. And we are worn out. It's running around with 2 different buildings. It was not an easy project. If you were doing ground up, it would be much easier, ground up. You can do it. Every day we come up with some different situations with 100-year-old building. We fight with it, we get it done. And we are getting it done, and we are promising it. It will be one of the projects of the country. The Hilton team came here, they loved it. But we have to open it right. I can't open it, just open it, you come and sleeping in a room. This is not Motel 6, this is not Comfort Inn. This is Hilton, a tapestry collection by Hilton. It's a 4-star hotel. The city is really getting a really good product. And we are working very hard for this. I will request we should be granted the extension, and we should not be punished.
Any other questions? Grace?
2 questions here. I think one, maybe for Steph or staff, is what is the hypothetical scenario if this is not completed by the end of this extension without the reduction in funds? I mean, I know so far we've been doing extension after another extension. Would that be the thing, or does this contract have a kind of end thing?
If there's nothing written in about what happens if the deadline is missed, then they would be in this situation again, which is they would have to come back and ask for another extension, because without the extension, then they don't qualify for the incentive.
Thank you. And then my other question was back to our Hotel Royer Icon leadership teams. As far as I agree with you about having to open it right, I agree with that. A concern I've had that we mentioned in the other sessions when we were touring was that the Tapestry website having that this can book in November. So my question is, can we take that off the website? Because I think that that is not going to be a good way to start in the community when people think it's going to be open when you know it's not going to be ready by then, right?
We are trying our best to open it before that. We need an extension for our safe side. We are trying to open before February, before November, but I cannot put a promise here because delay of the equipment or delay of some material can happen. That's why we are asking. If you look at it, I don't know, you have visited the property also, you might have seen that most of the work has already been done. We are almost getting towards the we're getting closer to opening. But there are many things. We can't open without the occupancy permit. And to get the occupancy permit, there are requirements of the city which we have to fulfill. And there are some equipment which we are waiting for, which we ordered a long time ago. And we are waiting for that. So if you look at the rooms, most of the rooms are ready. The furniture has been installed. Carpet has been done. For the meeting rooms, carpet has been installed. And the longest time it takes is the work which you needed before putting your final finishes. And final finishes gets done a lot faster, and that's what we are almost getting it done now.
Sure. I'm just saying that I think that that's a concern if people are booking on the website when it will not be ready and they have to be somewhere else. I also think that some of this is a little dishonest, the renderings of what it will look like when this is not what it did look like. I know that it will, but it's just that's not what the downstairs looks like yet. So I just, as far as having a good perception for the public, I think being honest about when it will be available and what it will be, I think will be a really good way for you to have that public positive opening that you're looking for.
So definitely we will look into this one for the opening date, and our team and Hilton, we have to discuss together, and then we can give the date. Definitely we will look into it.
And we discuss with Hilton weekly on the booking site and making sure that we're doing our best to be as accurate as possible on the opening dates. So we meet with them and discuss with them on a weekly basis so we can make these adjustments in real time.
Sure, which I definitely appreciate.
Hilton wants us to open the booking because the day when you open, you are not empty. So you start. That's why this is the guidance comes from them. So, but we'll discuss this concern also with them.
Sure, because I think it was also earlier stated that it was August start date, which didn't happen, and people got heard word of it, and rumors start spreading around, and so I think just to be careful about what you can start spreading around word of mouth in this town. Yeah.
Chandra.
Carol, were there stipulations with the second extension, and were they met?
There were no stipulations.
Okay.
Charisse.
I suppose my biggest question is if in fact you're going to have a soft opening in November, I'm assuming it's going to be a soft opening of sorts. It seems like you would have to advertise for staff and so on and so forth no later than September to start staffing. Do you already have that kind of thing in place where that's going to be happening?
Joseph, you want to give the answer?
Sure. Yeah, we already started a process of interviewing, selecting, going through different applications. We have job ads open for certain positions. As you can see, we have already a few key positions. We're missing one of our, the director of engineering, who's not here, but we already have that, along with another maintenance person. We're looking to get or find the third person in engineering. For the rest of the team, it is very important that we know exactly when we can open. We have already some people on the payroll, and that's money that we are spending, and we're not able to make any revenue. So I think as soon as we know when we have our program date for opening, that's when we hire the rest of the staff, which shouldn't take very long. We can staff within a month. People
Okay.
are looking for jobs.
Okay, and as far as even with the soft opening, that I'm assuming that the kitchen and everything else will be working. There'll be a menu, there'll be chef, there'll be
Correct.
servers, and so on and so forth, ready to go in November.
Mhm.
Okie dokie.
Chandra.
You're saying when you know when you can open, you're in charge of setting the date, correct? We're not in charge of setting your opening date. We're here to understand when your opening date will be. So it's up to you to tell us when your opening date. You're saying February, but maybe you can be open by November. There's so much wishy-washiness here.
So
If you've set a date, then you are bound by that date. You do everything you can to make that date. We're here looking at the third extension. I mean, I understand, logistics and all of that has, not gone the way you want, and you've had to redo some work because, some things have gone, not well with inspections. But like, you're setting the date. So if you set the date, you should stick by that date.
Well, I think we can stick by a date, but without having the equipment and materials that we've been mentioning, we wouldn't know exactly what our date would be.
So you still don't know, like, have an idea when that equipment or furniture or whatever will be coming in?
That's why we want to plan on having an extension, just to be safe.
Any further discussion, or is there a motion?
Some of these equipment is not in our hand, it's in manufacturer. And we talk to the manufacturers and the distributors pretty much on the ongoing basis. And a lot of time they inform us that they're just waiting for one part. And then what part is coming from overseas, when it will come and it's shortage, they say that everything is ready, it's one part. And that's why we have a target, we put our target for opening. But because of these situation, COVID and the shortage, that has not been the case before COVID. I mean, they were giving certain dates and that's were almost firm. And now the dates are not getting almost firm because we want to open in November. And we're trying our best. But if one equipment, one part is missing, it's not in our hand. That's why we are requesting for this extension. But if you look at the work which is in our hand, which we are getting it done. And that's why the 90% of the work is done.
Grace, did you have a question or comment?
I was going to make a motion.
Okay.
I would move ordinance number 2023-07-022, an ordinance amending redevelopment agreement with Icon Hospitality LLC to the regular agenda as proposed without the reduction. I'm trying to look at the actual ordinance. I think the ordinance has a XX per month one already in it. Is that right?
The amendment that the ordinance refers to has that in it.
Okay, but the ordinance itself does not.
Correct.
Okay, then just the regular ordinance to the regular agenda.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Moved by Grace and seconded by Sharice. Any further discussion? Sharice?
But I just want to, I want to explain why I'm going to agree with this. I had to wait 6 months for a refrigerator filter, okay? And so I can empathize with, and actually it was more than 6 months, and we had already paid for it. And in that 6 months' time, my mom's refrigerator got down to one last filter. And, we were going to the red dot before, and we ended up having to order other filters because the ones that I ordered did not get there in 6 months, and then those were late too. So I understand what's called supply side issue. I do understand that, because for me it was just something that small, but when it's something that is maybe a wolf range stove or oven or something, and having temp there, I know that can be an issue as well. So I'm willing to give you this benefit of the doubt. And that's something I do very often. So I hope that everything turns out well.
Any further discussion? Chandra?
Yeah, I understand logistical issues too, but when we took the tour, there were, and granted, I'm not a developer or whatever, but it seemed like there was much more than just furniture or things that needed to be placed. There was still actual construction stuff being done, walls still open. That's the problem I'm having with it, and whatever. But I would say that this is the last and final extension, and I don't know if we can add that into that language into the ordinance or whatever, that this is the last extension to be offered.
That's for you and your colleagues to thrash out.
Well, I'm willing to make an amendment to the ordinance to say that this is the last extension before there is an impact on finances.
That was moved by Grace. I don't know if you accept that amendment? Or is that a separate motion to amend it? The motion on the floor is to move for approval. So
I think I would keep my original motion, but you can move an amendment.
Madam Clerk, can you clarify the process for us on this?
Okay, you're moving to send this forward. Is that what you're doing, Grace?
That was the motion, and then I think the question is, can we add an amendment to that?
You can always amend a motion before it take its final vote.
But does it have to be me who moved it, or could someone else make an
It
amendment?
would have to be agreed by the mover and the seconder before it can be amended.
Okay, so how about I'll amend it, because we'll vote on that amendment first, right? And then the full thing. Oh, okay.
We will request that, please.
Sorry, so you don't have to accept that amendment. We can vote and then see what happens. And if it doesn't pass, then we could vote on an amended version if that felt appropriate at the time.
Yeah,
Is that not correct?
That's correct,
That's not
Jaya.
correct either?
I think that in order for you to amend that motion,
Yeah.
it has to be approved by the mover and the seconder before the motion is presented.
But the problem is then we don't get to vote on the amendment. Then we just vote on it yes or no as amended.
That's correct.
Okay.
So you get to decide if you are accepting that amendment. That's the next step. And then that's the step after.
I have to decide right now. Oh, gosh. I say no, because my thoughts, what I was going to say here is that I think we can always have the opportunity to cross that bridge when we get to it. I do think that in spirit, yes, in my mind, this is what I'm thinking, this is hopefully better be the last extension, but I don't feel confident enough in that to have it in writing now, just with outside circumstances or whatever else might happen. So I think I would choose to not amend the original motion.
All right, so that's,
And I agree with that.
the motion stands as it was previously stated. Any further discussion? Grace?
So again, while I do agree with that in spirit, I agree with my fellow council member Chandra here, and it seems like getting some head nods from also the partners here that we hope and expect that this is the last extension. But I think that I'm willing to cross that bridge when we get to it if we need to. And I also just want to say that I appreciate you taking on this really big project in our historic downtown building. I think that's great, and a lot of people have been wanting to see this revitalized, and especially with the appreciation that it would be a lot easier for you to just build from scratch from the ground up and leave this historic building there. I also just would want to mention, too, about the construction that when we saw on tours, what I saw is I did see that the rooms look great with all of their unique sizes and everything else, and that there's still a lot of work in the downstairs common areas. So I did also just want to clarify, you'd mentioned that the city needs to have the certificate of occupancy. But I also want to clarify that that depends on construction, I imagine, and meeting our basic standards. It's not that we as the city are holding up the process with our certificate or imposing excessive standards. It's that the building's not finished yet. It's not finished being constructed, and that's the big issue here. And I understand that there are lots of holdups with supply chains that have been still continuing after COVID. So I am in support of this extension, and I am willing to get to that reduction when we get there, but I'm not willing to commit to that yet.
Chris?
Yeah, I just want to say that as one who took the tour, there is a lot of work to be done. I mean, there just is. I mean, you can't hide that. I mean, you say you're 90% finished. Man, I don't see it. I think you got a lot of work to do. And again, I appreciate the effort, the investment, and those workers doing what they're doing. But this is a big, big project, and there's a lot of work to be done.
Couple quick comments. I agree with what's already been stated. I think making sure that it's done and done right is really important for us. But I also will say that if this comes back in front of us, I will be paying attention to what date is listed on the website and what date it actually moves forward, whether for another request for an extension or an amendment. I think that point about trust, that's vital to us here in Urbana. And if it's being advertised as opening at one date and we're being told something else, that doesn't look good. So I strongly encourage you to talk to Hilton about that opening date if you don't think you can actually make it, since you're listing it as when it'll be opened with them. But we have a recommendation that's been moved by Grace and seconded by Charisse to move ordinance number 2023-07-022, an ordinance amending a redevelopment agreement with Icon Hospitality LLC onto approval for the city council on the regular agenda. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Ms. Hersey?
Yes.
Ms. Colasetti?
Yes.
Ms. Bishop?
No.
Ms. Wilkin?
Yes.
That motion passes. Thank you. Next, we have ordinance number 2023-07-023, an ordinance approving a preliminary planned unit development, Hope Village Plan Case 2476, PUD 23, community development. Kevin Garcia.
Okay. Okay. Okay, good evening. All right, so this is an application for preliminary approval of a residential planned unit development called Hope Village, which is on this bit of farmland that's between Federal Drive to the north, which is in Urbana, and then Carver Drive and Dory Miller Drive to the south, which are in Champaign.
Excuse me. This is a collaboration between the Carl Foundation, the University of Illinois, and Champaign County Healthcare Consumers. And as you'll recall, the city of Urbana has also pledged $850,000 to the project from ARPA funds. Hope Village would include 30 small homes and a community center to provide, to provide permanent supportive housing for medically fragile homeless people. They're also requesting a waiver to have fewer parking spaces than the zoning ordinance requires because most of the residents will not own their own car. Much better. Thank you. The Plan Commission voted unanimously to recommend approval of this preliminary PUD with conditions. Staff concurs with their recommendation with some modified conditions that I will get to later. Many more details of the proposed development are available in the staff report, which is attached to the council memo. This is just a location map, so the inset map, if you can see it, shows its location in Urbana, so it's sort of on the far northwest side of Urbana, south of I-74. Then again, it's sort of on the border with Champaign, so the darker gray here is Urbana, and the light gray is Champaign. Now, I wanted to get into sort of timeline and sort of the steps that are necessary for this project to happen. The timeline on the right is sort of my conception of how it all needs to shake out. It's not necessarily exact, but it's sort of the timeline as I see it. So the first step is the preliminary PUD, which as the name suggests is preliminary. So it's really approval of the concept plan that's before you. The second piece is that they would like to build the community center and one model home by the end of this year. Then they would need approval for a final PUD. They could start that process sometime in the fall or maybe take that into spring next year. And then really, once the final PUD is approved, which has a great level of detail, once that's approved, then they would build out the remainder of Hope Village. So the remaining 29 homes on the site and all of the interior spaces. So again, just to hammer this point home, tonight we are focused on the preliminary PUD, which is one step in this longer process. And again, is a conceptual piece. So PUDs, I'm not sure if most folks on council here have gone through a PUD process before. So just very basically, it's broken down into two parts, the preliminary and the final. So again, the preliminary is really conceptual. All we require for the application is a conceptual site plan to be submitted. So that shows general locations of the buildings, streets and sidewalks, and paths, natural areas, and then sort of the land uses and the buffers between the land uses. So in this case, the concept is 30 tiny homes and a community center to provide services for the folks that are living in those homes. The final PUD gets into really a fine level of detail. So for that, they need a specific site plan, so where they really hone in on where the buildings and all structures are going to be located, where all the streets and sidewalks are, the open space, lighting, things like signs if they need it, and then landscape plans, so where all the plants are going to be, some preliminary stormwater plans, so it's getting into the engineering plans that we would see, utilities, conceptual building elevations, and then a development program and schedule. So really, how are they going to, to build this out in their phases? And again, this is where we're at tonight. Preliminary, conceptual phase. That's what we're focusing on here. Okay, so the Plan Commission held a public hearing on this preliminary PUD at their June 22nd hearing. They voted to recommend approval with conditions, which are in Exhibit D in your staff memo. I'll get to those in a bit. The applicants have also held a couple of neighborhood meetings. The first was on June
20th at the Pilgrim Missionary Baptist Church, which is right here over to the west of the site, which you can see there. We provided a summary of that meeting in Exhibit C. The applicant also met separately with a few individuals who had brought up some concerns about the project at Plan Commission to answer some of their questions. And then they also held another neighborhood meeting on July 13th at the new Free Will Baptist Church, which is nearby in Champaign. You should have received an Exhibit E earlier today, which was provided by Claudia Lenhoff of Champaign County Healthcare Consumers. And she provided a summary of those neighborhood meetings and of the Plan Commission, concerns that the project team heard at those meetings, and then responses to those concerns. So onto the recommendations. So again, the Plan Commission voted unanimously with 5 recommendations. I'm going to go through some of these because our staff recommendation is to get rid of a couple of these and then alter some of them. So the first is that no construction on the site can occur before final approval of the final PUD. The second was that the final PUD application isn't constrained by the preliminary site plan. So the Plan Commission, just for some background on that, the Plan Commission didn't want to tie them to much of the site plan other than sort of the concept. Because I think the Plan Commission thought that, I guess, the site could be designed a little bit better, so they didn't want to really constrain them based on the preliminary site plan. So, to move the project along, they suggested this, that the final plans not be constrained by the preliminary site plan. The third was that the final site plan would take major steps to mitigate the impacts on the neighborhood to the south. We're recommending modifying that in a little, just the language of that. The fourth is that an additional meeting with the public be conducted, and then the fifth was that all parking requirements be waived, since most people who live there will not have cars. So our recommendation was to strike the first one, because it's a little complicated here, but they could actually build the pieces that they plan to build this year. So the community center and a model home they could build by right in the R4 zoning district. In an alternative universe, they could have built those already and then applied for the preliminary PUD and then applied for the final PUD. But they've applied for the preliminary PUD first, so they have assurance that they don't build a community center to serve people that that then don't live there. So we're recommending that we just strike that, since they could actually build some things by right. And once they get preliminary approval of the PUD, that would give them a go-ahead to build those buildings this year, and then they can apply for the final PUD. Okay, number 2 is fine, that it's not constrained by the preliminary site plan. Number 3. So we felt that the language was it was kind of vague and hard to pin down. So rather than saying they would take major steps to mitigate the impacts on the neighborhood, we just recommend that their final site plan is responsive to the concerns of neighboring residents. And they have heard many concerns, so the final site plan would need to be responsive to those. The fourth, they already had an additional meeting with the public, so they had satisfied that recommendation of the Plan Commission. And then again, the fifth, parking requirements are waived. So to summarize, staff recommendation is approval of the preliminary PUD with these 3 conditions: that the final site plan not be constrained by the preliminary site plan, that the final site plan is responsive to the concerns of neighboring residents, and that parking requirements are waived. I believe that concludes my presentation, and I will take questions. I know many of the people in the audience are from the project team, so I'm sure they can answer more specific questions you might have.
Happy to take any questions, and I do believe that there's a representative from Champaign County Healthcare Consumers who's available to answer questions as well. Chris?
Well, I guess what I'd like to hear from representatives from the project team, such as, the applicants, I should say, U of I or Carl or Healthcare Consumers, is could you talk a little bit about the door-to-door that you did, the lit drop, and the reaction to the by the residents?
You're welcome to come up and sit at the table with Kevin. Either way is fine.
Yeah, sure.
Hi, Kevin.
Hello. You gonna hurdle it?
I can't figure out things.
I push this. Great.
Yes,
Oh, thanks, y'all. Good evening. My name is Adani Sanchez. I'm the Client Services Coordinator for Champaign County Healthcare Consumers. And while my director, Claudia Lenhoff, is the one who's been working most closely on this project, I do have some comments from her and can speak specifically to the lit drops. We have had folks working about 40 hours dedicating their time, and we're a small organization. I don't know if you know a little bit about us, but you might recognize some of these faces because we're the ones that are always running around. So my coworker, Paulette, Josh, Nicole, Shay, Claudia herself were out knocking on doors, talking directly to residents, and for the most part received interesting questions. They were excited because they knew people who might benefit from this project, and so generally the reception was pretty warm. They were handing out things for the first meeting that we had as well as the secondary meeting, so they did direct door-to-door contact for both of those meetings, and generally had very warm receptions.
Any further questions? Sharice?
Yeah. I don't have any real questions. What I have is comments. So,
Do you want to do that now or after a motion has been
I
submitted?
kind of want to do that now.
I think that's
Is that okay?
I think it's allowable, yeah.
It's okay? Okay. Only mainly because I once again, I just want to make it plain that, because this is in my ward. And I've talked to Marty and I've talked to Claudia, and I'm still not with this. And I'll say this one more time in the sense because of the fact that we lack so many amenities that are needed. And there are also, just the issues that, and I understand Claudia talked to me about the consumer health folks and their kerfluffle with Carl, but Carl has always been located where it's located, which is in my ward, and it was, I guess, my community, Ellis subdivision in particularly, feels somewhat things not being done in good faith. Okay, this is not a community that is like last minute. Oh, we can get ARPA funds and we can put this together. I'm sure you've been putting this together and developing this for, if not a few months, a few years, but to put it, to think about, to have that brain, that whole thought, and no one that I know of that I've spoken to is against or wants to purposefully withhold services or anything like that from people who are mentally challenged, medically challenged, or anything like that. But it is a community that will be dropped into another community that is already working very hard to maintain itself. And you can say, oh, we'll have the grocery truck, we'll have the Carl bus, and all of those things. And one of my constituents said about, the Carl bus being at Love Corner. I don't go to Love Corner, so I don't know. But the one thing I do know is that this is not a service that has ever been actually offered to an already stressed community in that fact. Although most of the residents go to Carl for their health services. So that is why there's that feeling of mistrust, because this is something that could have been done or should have been been done for past however many decades. That's something. And so if you want to understand where I'm coming from, and if you want to understand where the people that have spoken against this are coming from, it's history is where they're coming from. And it's not just Carl. U of I is involved. Yeah, we got a long history with them too, just so you know. And so there's that feeling of once again just being dumped on, so to speak. And I'm sure that what you are attempting to do or what your intentions are honorable in some way. However, you got to know your community it just shows me that you don't. And that's what I had to say. That's my comment.
Grace, I think you had a question.
Yes, I have two questions. I was wondering about, so the access will be from Carver Drive, right? Why not from Federal Drive? Like, you could flip this whole thing upside down and have your phase 2 be closer to the neighborhood. And so, yeah, why not have your entrance off Federal Drive, and why Carver Drive?
So we may need to have our design team assist with this answer, but in looking at the project, Carver Drive has direct access to Lincoln Avenue, so it's easier for emergency vehicles. It's much closer to 2 hospitals in the community, and the utilities and the site traffic is much better to the south. If you look at the traffic control through Federal Drive, there's a lot of winding that goes on to get emergency vehicles up that way, and there's no bus service up toward that end, or very limited bus service up toward that end.
Then my other question was also somewhat related about parking and accessibility, because it looks like you have this one parking lot at the entrance, and then it's all fenced in, so it's walking access through the community center to the rest of the neighborhood. Is that right?
That's correct.
And so I just don't understand how that will work with people, especially who may be medically fragile and have mobility issues, especially some of these that are only accessible through walking path. It looks like you won't have any vehicles. So I just don't understand with people dropping someone off or bringing groceries, or, I mean, there's just, especially people who might have mobility or medical issues, I just don't understand how this is physically accessible.
So Donnie, you might be able to discuss your population a little better
Yeah.
there, but I would say that in researching other projects similar to this across the country, this is the ones that have been successful, this is a very common layout. It's really not designed for vehicular traffic. It is designed as a contained village, gated for the safety of the residents as well as the safety of the surrounding neighborhoods. The walking paths and the garden areas do create a nice environment for outside. Again, this is a population that's used to being outside without vehicle traffic. You'll notice that there are loop roads that go through the site, which were planned for emergency vehicle access, where the gates would be open only in case of an emergency vehicle, such as ambulance or fire trucks. And then deliveries or major deliveries could have access that way. But the residents, for the most part, would not have vehicles, and they're used to being pedestrian versus vehicle traffic, and that just creates the environment that the village really lends itself to for this particular population.
Yeah, we don't drive our cars into our bedrooms. Part of creating a safe space means that our sidewalks are going to be wide enough to allow for wheelchairs and mobile devices for people to navigate those, because there is emergency access. They're not too far away from needing to get into a vehicle. But again, so the point is that we're going to have removing the danger of cars from people who maybe are not as fast as someone who would be walking quickly because of of medical fragility. So the idea is that these aren't people who are necessarily using just their feet, right? They're in devices, they're in chairs. That's, again, a big part of the housing design as well, is making sure that you're building with people who have assistive devices available. So they're using assistive devices, and so that means making spaces big enough. And a lot of folks aren't going to have vehicles, and so again, that's why there isn't a lot of parking right up to the front doors.
Thank you. And while I do think that makes sense, I still have some concerns when I think about in a practical scenario. I know some people who might qualify to live in such a place as this, and I mean, they're not forced to stay there, right? They're allowed to leave. So I mean, I imagine that I would sometimes, pick up my friend, go grocery shopping or something and bring it back. And then I'm just imagining him as an elderly person with medical conditions, then having to carry his groceries all the way back there. I mean, I think this would work, especially if people were just completely self-contained, which I understand would be most of it, but the people are allowed to leave. And so I wonder how this will work when people are trying to get out to a bus stop and it's icy out and things, rather than having something more accessible within the neighborhood.
Any further questions? Chandra.
I'll move approval of ordinance number 2023-07-023, an ordinance approving a preliminary planned unit development, Hope Village, plan case 2476 PUD 23, onto City Council on the regular agenda for approval.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Moved by Chris and seconded by Chandra. Just to clarify, is that with the recommendations for staff or as stated?
Yes, with the staff recommendations.
And any further discussion? Chris?
Ward 3 residents are right to not want public drunkenness, open-air drug consumption, and drug selling, and drug buying, fist fighting, cars coming and going all hours of the day and night, loud music, and loud partying, panhandling, littering, pedophiles, and whatever else the word homeless conjures up for some people. Ward 3 should never have to suffer such mess. Sadly, it takes but a few knuckleheads to ruin the entire reputation of the rest of us homeless. Thankfully, the residents who will inhabit or would inhabit Hope Village will be none of these few knuckleheads. Hope Village residents will be those who need this housing the most, the medically fragile who haven't the energy or the desire to be fooling around. They just need a clean, safe place to live and rest and deal with their medical conditions. There's supposed to be individual case management for each resident. There will be 24/7 around-the-clock security, and this will be a gated community, and it will require checking in and checking out. I think the residents in Carver and in that area understand all that. Hope Village has inspired some excellent long overdue questions that Alderperson Hersey is well right to talk about, this history. Who will get the jobs building the village? Can First Followers Go Mad program be involved? Can the Housing Authority's Youth Build be involved? How diversified is Petrie Coon's workforce? Can the neighborhood use the community center? Can the neighborhood garden in the plots and grow food for themselves? And what is the long-range economic development plan for the people of Ward 3? Long overdue question. And isn't a grocery store with quality produce and dairy part of healthcare too? And if we're going to use solar panels, can't we create a solar panel factory where I can get a job and retrofit the neighborhood with solar panels to lower people's energy costs? That is sustainability. And how can the residents have a permanent voice that continues to foster a better relationship with Carle Hospital and the university? And I'm not personally taking it out on the representatives of Carle or the U of I, because you didn't create this history, but there is a history, and it's not good. And the community has well right to question and not trust what you're doing here. And it's sad because, you know, who's really suffering? These people that need this housing. You know, I'm hoping that Hope Village can be the catalyst that brings good tidings to Ward 3. These same concerns happened in my ward 28 years ago when we were trying to start an apartment building for the homeless. It was feared then that if we build it, they will come, and if they come, it will be a disaster. Well, 28 years later, we are still waiting for that disaster. So I would encourage us all to be continue to be faithful servants and welcome the stranger, have compassion on the poor and sick, and make peace and try to find some common ground and some common benefits for everybody. And, you know, I support this project, but I also support that community, and they have some legitimate issues that need to be resolved in the long run. You know, what is going to happen up there, and what is in it for them? That's a very good question, and I hope that as we go forward, we can include them and keep the communication going and incorporate that. And so, because you ain't going to get me to live in these tiny homes if I'm not welcomed by the community. I mean, that does my health no good if the neighbors hate me. Okay, so let's work together and keep going.
Any further discussion? Okay. Want to thank staff for their changes. I feel much more comfortable with the way this is presented. I think it addresses some inconsistency in the way we're applying the rules, right? So I appreciate this. So we have a motion for approval of ordinance number 2023-07-023, an ordinance approving a preliminary planned unit development Hope Village Plan Case 2476 PUD 23 that was moved by Chandra and seconded by Chris. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Ms. Hersey?
No.
Ms. Colasetti?
Yes.
Ms. Bishop?
Yes.
Ms. Wilkin?
Yes.
That motion passes. Thank you all.
Thank you.
And I believe we are going to need an extension because there is still a discussion on the agenda.
I would move to extend us till 11 o'clock, or if we're done before.
Okay, there's a motion to extend till 11. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, moved by Grace, seconded by Chandra to extend until 11. Do we have to do a roll call for that?
Only if you want to.
Well, I need approval one way or another.
Okay, yeah.
All those in favor? Is that okay?
It's actually just a motion, yeah.
Just
you can do all those in favor.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that motion passes. Yes.
I really need to go.
Okay.
Leave.
Okay.
So, I wanted, no, well, you have a quorum. I
We
just
do
wanted
have a
to-
quorum still.
but I-
Appreciate that.
But I do need to.
Notice.
Get home to my mom.
Thank you. We do have one more discussion item on the agenda, which is a discussion of single-use bag tax.
So I'm going to start this off, and then Tim Cowan and Scott Tess are here. And this is going to be kind of informal, but what we were asked to do is think about what kind of a lift would this be for staff to move forward and do the outreach that was requested and, really refine the proposal. So we would be getting some feedback. I think, Scott's done some work on figuring out there's kind of, I don't know, I'll call it, for lack of a better word, like a model ordinance that's being adopted by different jurisdictions and stuff. So the council approved, so there's the real-time commitment would be from the finance department and from Public Works, specifically Scott. So in the finance department, the council with the budget approved a new position in finance to on the services side of finance, and so that additional person would be available to help with this or other revenue generating pursuits that we had talked about. But I think that the thing I want to focus on this evening, because in talking this through with Tim and Scott, it led to something that I really was unaware of, and I think you all need to be aware of as you consider how you want to spend Scott's time in particular. So in thinking about, okay, what would you stop doing in order to implement this single-use bag tax? And so there's a variety of things that Scott works on that he would either curtail or cut back on, but the two probably most important things would be that the Sustainability Advisory Commission would need temporarily to be reduced to quarterly meetings from monthly meetings, just because of the staff time commitment for that. But here's the real big thing, and this is what led to this broader discussion, and at some point very soon I'm going to turn it over to Scott, because I'll be out of my element. But it was cutting back the number of events that we have to promote the geothermal, bulk geothermal program. And so that led me in just as a having more of a superficial knowledge of our climate action plan and so on, thinking about, I pulled out the annual report to say, well, what does that really mean to us? And that led to a conversation about the fact that our climate action plan, I don't know, it's expired or whatever you want, however you want to characterize it. And we have some goals out there. We have a goal to reduce, greenhouse gas emissions by 100% by 2040, and this geothermal program is a huge part of that. And we don't even have a plan now. We don't have action steps. The plan expired, and we just have this goal out there, and we don't have anything overt that we've committed to. Kind of along the lines of, we have these asset management plans, and we're marching out on making investments to implement those kind of plans, but we really don't have anything on the climate action plan. So now I'm going to turn over to Scott just to give a little bit more information about that, but it's to give you more background about how Scott spends his time and how do you want to spend this time? Is it implementing a single-use bag tax or taking on something bigger that we have a goal hanging out there and no means to implement? So go ahead, sorry.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thanks for hanging in there a little bit longer. I will, and for tolerating this narrative I'm going to give you. For folks watching at home, just a reminder, I'm Scott Tess. I'm the Sustainability and Resilience Officer for the city. You know that I spend a fair amount of my time on energy and climate issues, specifically developing renewable energy projects. When I started about 11 years ago at the city of Urbana, I inherited a climate action plan. We implemented a number of elements of that plan, and that plan termed out. We drafted a new climate action plan following that that was much more compact, much more focused, and we implemented a number of actions from that plan. That plan is now also termed out, so it was for a fixed term. Now, we continue to work on energy and climate issues despite the fact that that plan is termed out. We spend a lot of time, as I mentioned, working on renewable energy development. And we support renewable energy development in 5 ways. One is we buy renewable energy credits with our municipal electric aggregation program. 2 is our bulk solar purchase program. 3 is our bulk geothermal purchase program. 4 is our landfill solar development. We have 1 landfill solar project already developed, and we're working on a second one right now. And 5 is renewable energy development at city-owned facilities. We have as you know, we have a brand new citywide storage facility. We're collecting 12 months of utility bills at that facility so that we can appropriately size a solar array on that roof. And we're also, as you know, working on developing 2 new fire stations, which supporting with some information, background information, the development of those projects with the anticipation that they would be geothermal powered right from the get-go. If we build them with natural gas to begin with, they will be natural gas, fossil fuel power plants in those buildings for the next 25 years. And also we anticipate doing some solar with those facilities too. So 5 different ways we're developing renewable energy. Beyond these efforts, you know, there is no additional staff time, no additional funding, and no comprehensive planning for any additional sustainability activities. So we put ourselves in a position of trade-offs. We have to give one thing or to do another, or have additional staff and funding resources. It's worth mentioning that, in my opinion, the bulk geothermal purchase program that we're doing is the most important thing I'm working on. And yeah, I'm sad to say that we're not doing a good enough job. I'm not doing a good enough job, mainly because I don't have enough staff time. There's a ton more work to do. So the bulk solar program and the bulk geo program are essentially the same model. But there's a ton more work for me to do in the bulk geo program because I have different partners and I have to do a lot more of the work on the bulk geothermal purchase program. If you've been to one of our solar programs that we've been doing we're going on our 8th year, I think now, you'll know that the Midwest Renewable Energy Association really runs that program, and I'm their primary partner, but they do a ton of work. They put a ton of investment into that program. I have to do most of that investment for the GEO program, and I just don't have the time. And we're not making as much progress, and it shows. And so that's really important to me, and I think that's worth mentioning. I think it's also worth mentioning that we, with our recent municipal electric aggregation contract, in order to get competitive pricing, we had to curtail our renewable energy credit purchasing with that program. So the next time we get around doing our greenhouse gas inventory, that's going to hit. We're not going to be able to claim as much reduction in greenhouse gases because we just don't have the savings to buy as much renewable energy credits as we have in the past. So that's worth mentioning too. Now we're going to keep making incremental gains in our greenhouse gas inventory and reducing global warming pollution in the city with our existing renewable energy programming. But when we're thinking about the council adopted goal of carbon neutrality by 2040, those incremental gains will not get there. So I'm just putting that in context. It is an ambitious goal, carbon neutrality by 2040, and I don't want folks to have an unrealistic expectation that what we're doing now fits that reaching that goal. I will mention, as Carol referenced, that I did take some time to call the 3 most recent cities that have approved a single-use bag tax and talk to them. A couple of things, some themes stand out. Now, one, those 3 and many other cities are all using almost identical ordinances. So that's kind of that's been standardized in Illinois. It's all the same. And 2, most of the cities now are not doing significant public engagement. They're doing some direct mail. They have their council meetings, they draft the ordinance, they approve it. There's the implementation period. They talk with, or they notify and communicate with and direct mail the affected retailers. Some are even providing some resources for the retailers, but they're not doing the sort of public engagement that we've been doing with the Imagine Urbana program. That's a huge scale, multi-year, multiple staff persons, significant funding. That's not the scale that these cities seem to be doing. And then 3, they're all using their existing financial tax software to collect this tax. So those were some takeaways that I got from those conversations I was able to have. And with that, I'll take any questions you may have.
Any questions? Grace?
Well, maybe it is a question, but I'm going to say stuff too, because this is a discussion, so I can discuss, right? So thank you for the follow-up. I appreciate the info and looking into this and having a loop back around. Trying to get myself together. I'm feeling really discouraged by this because I'm finding it a little ridiculous that it's posed like this as a choice, where if we do this, then Scott has to reduce the SAC or less geothermal power hours. And it seems like it's not just this, I guess lots of other public works projects, but it doesn't seem to work this way with other things, like when we want to hire a new position or an investigator, or we want to give over $1 million in police bonuses. It's not proposed as a give and take like this is to me. So I was also really hoping that we could have had this discussion, which it seems like it was ready before we passed the budget, because it sounds like you're saying with additional capacity, with funds or additional staff, that this would be possible. And that's why I was really hoping to have this discussion before we approved the budget, because I would be absolutely in support of that. My other question, I do have a question, was what about when we were discussing the budget, it was mentioned that there's an extra $100,000 in the recycling fund, and I didn't know if we could have any more information or if any of those funds could be accessible for hiring maybe a temporary person to do the upfront work to start this so that we don't have to pull Scott away from his other important duties.
We'd have to, there is some language in the ordinance regarding recycling fees being spent on recycling. We could look at that and see if, how tight that is and whether it would allow hiring a staff person to do this kind of single-use bag tax implementation. I can't answer that confidently right now, but certainly with more resources, we could do more work, undoubtedly. And I'm certainly game for doing more sustainability work.
Yeah, and I think another thing, if we're talking about timeline comes into this too, right? Because just finding somebody off the street and getting them in the door is not going to happen. We have 15 to 20% vacancies still. So even the finance position that would staff this, realistically, that person's not going to be here till January. And without that person, it's kind of moot to do the other work if we don't have them to implement that. So it comes in with timeline too. Yes, we could go get more resources. You can do a budget amendment for that, as if you wanted to support something like that. Right. You could do that. So it's not a question of, if we didn't pass the budget, it's impossible to do, but it's a timeline thing. And in my mind, which is what it comes down to, is if the intent of the council is to prioritize this over other ongoing things in a timeline that is specific to this fiscal year, it's either more resources or we sacrifice what Scott's doing. So that's the presented option. Is in the timeline we've talked about, if we're talking about fiscal year 24, it's unlikely that we're going to have another resource available to do that with 15 to 20% vacancies already waiting. So I think it depends on what your anticipated schedule is too.
I saw Carol and then Chandra.
I do want to just be fair about the way this conversation has taken place, which is this evolved out of a council, out of the mayor council goals, and this is an expansion of what an action step was, which was we were tasked with exploring green revenues, and this is one of the things we explored. Then we were asked to give some feedback about what it would take to actually implement this. And Tim has been very clear every time it's come up, which was we're going to have to stop doing something. And then you asked us to get specific, which is why we had to come back for more discussion. So when it is in the context of a budget conversation and people want to fund something in particular and the council supports that, then additional funding is made available. But the way this conversation evolved, not unlike a lot of the mayor council goals and the action steps, we were asked to accomplish a variety of things, and then we said, where are the resources coming from? Sometimes the resources were ARPA. Sometimes the resources were, we had a green, yellow, red column for resources. And so I think Tim's been clear all along that this was going to require trade-offs.
Chandra?
So, I mean, if not this fiscal year, then what does it look like to start incorporating this particular idea in the upcoming fiscal years? Like if you need staffing or if you need the software or something like that, like can we incrementally start moving toward implementing this type of fee or tax?
Yeah, I mean, we can feather things in, but it's still a chunk of time that has to be spent. I don't know what the exact estimate was for the initiation, but a few hundred hours is what we thought, and that's kind of bare bones public engagement stuff. That's kind of doing further analysis to kind of figure out who this is going to hit, how this is going to hit them, and getting very little feedback on it. Essentially saying, we're putting this out there, we're going to probably have some kind of basic stakeholder engagement with people that we know this is going to impact, at least the commercial properties that are going to be impacted, and then it would come to ordinance. So if there was going to be a more robust public engagement thing, that could be done over time and some other things, but without adding resources, we have to work with what we have. Scott's probably got 110% on his plate, quite frankly, with what he has going, and he's always got new initiatives and other things like that that are coming up, inclusive of things like this, that we try to work in, and trying to commit, essentially 15% of his year to something like this with geothermal trying to get off the ground. We're in, year 3 now? Year 3 of geothermal. He's dedicated a lot of extra effort towards that. Eventually, potentially, the geothermal effort, possibly reduces some. We build things in, or we feather, those 300 or 400 hours in over a longer span. That's possibly feasible. But, I just want to set real expectations with it. Alternatively, if we wanted to get other resources, what is the timeline in which that takes us to do that? Do we hire a consultant? Do we bring on a temporary staff person? You have to find a very specific somebody that knows what they're doing and how to do that stuff, and can do that with less interaction from Scott so that he doesn't get derailed from his other things. If it's going to be somebody that is going to still require a lot of Scott's time in supervising and managing that effort, it's almost not worth doing that thing. But in addition to that, is if you guys told us July 1st of this year, we support X amount of dollars to support more resources for this thing, it's going to get in line with everything else here at the city. And when that's going to happen, the finance position, realistically, if it's posted, it's not posted yet, I don't believe, but if it's posted at the end of the first quarter, realistically, we don't have anybody in the door until January 1 to go through basically taking applications, having interviews, hiring process, and then actually getting that person in the door. So that's the finance piece of it. If we approved additional resources to assist Scott in this, there's a timeline tied to that too, that very well could be the end of the fiscal year. And that happened, in past budgets. It happens. We approve positions and we attempt to staff them, and they get prioritized, and fiscal year 23 items become fiscal year 24 items. I just want to be realistic about timelines. If the expectation is fiscal year 24, it's a trade-off, or multiple years of feathering that in.
Further discussion? Grace?
I think I don't really have anything to say about it, 'cause I'm just, what's our thing from this, Like, I feel like we're not really at a consensus. We don't even have, our full council here. I don't know if this discussion is really the time or place to get a concrete answer on how we want to go about this, or if this was kind of more informational. So yeah, I guess I didn't know if there is a plan on where we go from here or how we proceed from here.
Carol?
My suggestion is, and we need to revisit the mayor-council goals, because they basically had a 2-year life. And so at the end of this calendar year, we'll be kind of through what we said we were going to work on. And I think then it's time to revisit. We're talking internally about what that process might look like, so that we can propose something to council. I think that's the time to talk about when you're looking at all the priorities for additional effort on the part of staff and what we can sustain. I think that's the time over the next 2 years to say, is this the thing that we want to do? Or, because there's other ideas that people had. I mean, the thing that I didn't know I really honestly have to admit, I didn't know anything about the climate action plan because it hasn't been discussed since I've been here for 5 years. And so I was really surprised, like, that seems to me like you might want to have that as an action step to revise that plan and come up with something that we can fund and support. And so that's another conversation that you might want to consider when you're talking about the next 2 years worth of goals and action steps, if you want to keep the same strategies and so forth. So to me, I think that would be a perfect time to say, what do we want the single-use bag tax to look like when we're talking about all the other action steps that you might want to advance?
Chandra.
I also think in consideration of like future budgets, the way that our society is moving toward a lot more sustainability efforts, perhaps we need to consider expanding Scott's Office of One or whatever. And that should be included in the budget so that we have the capacity to not only explore but also implement. I mean, you just rattled off 5 programs that you're handling by yourself. Like, if you're at capacity, we can't even consider anything else. So I think perhaps in, the coming budgets, we need to figure out, like, how do we expand your office so that you can do the programs that you want to do well and then also incorporate more. Because, green initiatives are, top priority for the country, the state, and it needs to be our city too.
Diane.
Scott listed 5 major initiatives, but what he didn't say and what he shared when we applied for the Climate Action Award was that on a per capita basis, can you finish my sentence so it's accurate?
Yeah. So, on a per capita basis, we probably have the best bulk solar purchase program in the country. That's probably going to be surpassed in the next few years by Chicagoland. They're restarting a bulk solar purchase program with our partner MREA, Midwest Renewable Energy Association. We also, before this year, we had the first and only bulk geothermal purchase program in the country, and our bulk geothermal purchase program has now been copy and pasted with our same partners in Chicagoland. And so, the scale that they're going to be able to deploy geothermal heating and cooling is going to blow away the scale that we were able to do in our 3 counties down here, just because they're so much bigger. But that's a good thing that other people are taking our innovations and copying them and deploying them.
So despite the fact our climate action plan termed out, the work continued, and frankly, we are the leaders in the state of Illinois, which is something we can be very, very proud of. And if we're talking about reducing greenhouse gases, it's the focus on renewable energy.
Chandra, would you take the chair for me?
I take the chair, and the chair recognizes Gio.
Thank you. I just want to go back for a second because I think that Grace brought up an important point that was kind of glossed over, which is that there was an attempt to have a discussion to get this into the budget for increased capacity. And I think it is worth noting that there are other projects, doesn't have to be Imagine-Urbana scale, but there are those projects where we've gotten consultants, right? ARPA is another example of that, where we've hired consultants when we've said that something is a priority. And I think absolutely it's worth noting and acknowledging all the great work that Scott and other folks in Urbana are doing around this topic. But and the fact that we don't have a current plan, like that's something that's news to me, right? That we had one, we don't have a current one. Like, I think that's a problem. But I also think that I also have a problem with how this is being presented as a either or, when there wasn't ever an opportunity to say, how do we get both, right? I know that there are lots of challenges with hiring, but I also think that it's important that we start thinking about, okay, if not this fiscal year, what do we need to do this fiscal year so we can do it next fiscal year? Because otherwise, we're just gonna end up right back here next fiscal year saying, oh, you should have put it in the budget, when there wasn't an opportunity to figure out how. So I would like to see this not die here tonight, but if it means that we have to start taking the long view of how do we get this so that we are increasing capacity, so we can keep moving the needle, so we can keep being a leader instead of, you know, letting the Chicagoland area beat us, right? Because yeah, they got more people. I think that that's important for us, right? Like that we do need to keep thinking about how we move the needle forward while also not burning out the staff that we have, because we're very fortunate with the folks that we have. And I think that there are steps we can be taking now to make sure that we start thinking ahead to next fiscal year if that's what it's going to take.
Yeah, and I think that that's just part of the equation. Is we need to understand what your expectations are schedule-wise. You know, in the conversations we had, the idea was about getting it in the FY24 budget. If we're doing it, working within those constraints, and that really that timeline, less than the constraints, but that timeline is trading things off. If the expectation is we want to see this done and we want to make progress on these things, there are different alternatives there. But, you know, we have to be considerate of, you know, what is, you know, if the expectation is that we have this done in the next mayor council goals, where it's like, we're going to do this in this timeline, we can devise a plan to get either a consultant engaged to pick this up and push this thing forward. You know, we also need feedback from you guys on what your expectation for community engagement is, because most of our efforts that we come to you with, you want a lot of community engagement. What we've kind of looked at with this is it's becoming more commonplace. If you want a robust community engagement, that's either more money for a consultant or more of Scott's times. You know, how we've presented it as of now, you know, what our expectations are for the implementation are pretty, you know, 15% is not nothing, right? But it's not 1,000 hours. You know, I look back at like the stormwater utility fee was one of the last ones we implemented back in 2011, 2013. And it was on that scale. It was 1,200 hours or something of a consultant's time to go and develop analysis and do community engagement and all of those things. So, you know, we need to understand your expectations as far as that goes too.
I would recommend adding that to our next 2x2 so you can get that feedback.
Okay.
Yes, please take the chair back.
I will gladly take the chair. We have just a few minutes left. Is there any further discussion on this item before we move on to council input and communication? All right, thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Is there any council input and or communication? Seeing none, we stand adjourned.